and I would really appreciate it if you would stop Rob Taylor from blathering on and on.
Opinions expressed by talk show hosts, callers, or guests on the Rob Taylor Report do not necessarily represent the opinions of the hosting platform, subsidiaries, sponsors, or possibly anyone else on the planet or the known universe. From the tinfoil and lead-lined broadcast bunker on the beautiful southern coast of Oregon, it's the Rob Taylor Report. So strap yourself in. Your weekly political therapy session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the nearly famous Rob Taylor.
Hello, Coos County. Hello, America. West Coast and beyond. I want to thank you all for joining me today. I've got a really interesting show for you. We're going to get the other half of the argument over whether or not the bylaws, the current bylaws with the Libertarian Party of Oregon, whether they're legit or not. You know, that's the most important thing. Are your documents legit? If they're not legit, then you got to get. I know that was a bad rhyme, but are they legit or not? And that's the question that we're going to be asking here with Matt Rowe, and I'm going to bring him on in a few minutes. I want to let everyone know we were going to play a round of Where's 3H Tree Service. We already have a winner, and so congratulations to that winner. Maybe we'll get a picture from Matt and we'll get to put that on the air. So we'll be playing that next week. Where's 3H Tree Service? That'll be happening next week. And I want to let you know that after this interview, I'm going to give you some catch up on what we're doing with the windmill campaign, the Breaking the Wind campaign. Yes, we're breaking wind here in Oregon. We're breaking wind like you cannot believe it. And we are going to do a lot of different things. And I promise you it's going to be pretty good. So this is going to be after the interview with Matt Rowe. And I've got a new David Brock Smith video. Yes, I've got a new David Brock Smith video, but you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to wait until a little bit later in the show, and we'll play that video because I think you'll be interesting. David has got a new career. So we will be showing that. But for right now, if you didn't get to see Friday night show, it was an incredible show. It was really a very informative look at the history of the Libertarian Party of Oregon. And the party has been through many different changes. It's going through changes now. And that's why I wanted to bring up an old member of the Libertarian Party who's challenged the bylaws or the legitimacy of the current bylaws of the party. And he has taken that to the Secretary of State. And the Republican Party has filed a complaint against the Libertarian Party saying that because they didn't follow their bylaws, that their candidates are illegitimate. And you don't want to be illegitimate. You want to be legit. And so to be legit, you got to make sure that your bylaws are good. And I'm going to be talking to Matt Rowe. Many of you might know Matt. He lives here in Coos County, and he is the chair of the Libertarian Party, the state party. Isn't that cool? So I got to give kudos to Matt. So I'm going to bring him on the air right now, and we're going to give him a huge introduction. Matt, how you doing, man? Matt,
I'm here. I'm sorry, bud.
That's all right.
Outstanding. I'm doing outstanding on this beautiful day in North Bend.
I hope it's beautiful because it's windy as hell, but it's beautiful here in Bandon as well.
No, the wind is beautiful. You know, I love it. I love it. Love the sea air. Even though Coke Hill's always my hometown and I'll always love her. I do like that wind we got here in North Bend.
Let me ask you, just for locals here in Coos County, is it cheaper to live in North Bend or is it cheaper to live in Coke Hill?
Boy, it depends. It depends on what you're looking for. I mean,
yeah.
Bandon, I would say, is the most expensive, definitively.
I know we're spoiled sons of bitches out here. We're latte sipping liberals. What can I tell you?
Well, you're paying for the ambiance, right?
That's
But
right.
that's what my wife says when I go to a place and I pay $10 more a plate for a meal than what it's worth. Is we're paying for the ambiance.
Yeah.
Well, no, God bless them. But I was going to say though that I would say they're about comparable. Maybe a little bit lower in North Bend only because they have more housing stock to go through. There's very little rental stock in Coquille.
That's interesting. I thought it would be the opposite. I thought Coquille would probably have more rentals because they have more space. North Bend is kind of, well, it's almost like an island. Well, it's definitely a peninsula, and it's kind of cut off from being able to build and expand because it's got the city on the one side, the river and the ocean on the two other sides.
Well, no. I don't know about the actual science of it all, and I could be completely inaccurate. I just know we found a very good place at a good price in a good neighborhood. Well, then it became invaded by bums. But the good news is we seem to have gotten that a little under control, and the U.S. Supreme Court pulled their head out of their ass and allowed cities to actually police again.
Well, yeah, but isn't that irrelevant in Oregon since we have House Bill 3115, where they codified the law of allowing bums to camp wherever they want unless the city or the county provides housing? Isn't that true?
Well, this is true, and we would hope that the legislature will clean this mess up. Now, they made it. They made it. If not, I know there are several citizen groups across the state that are very interested in cleaning up that law, repealing it and reforming it under the ballot initiative. And I think the LPO, under our very aggressive affiliate program that we've adopted, is going to play an integral role in that. But hopefully the legislature can do its own job, because I know the Democrats won't like the bill we come up with. And the fact of the matter is, I think the will of the people at this point would pass something much, much more conservative than they would want.
I would hope so, after what we've experienced, and especially what the larger cities have experienced in the last 4 years. I mean, it's just turned into a shithole.
No, I mean, we used to be literally like a paradise, you know. I mean, this state used to be great. It was affordable. It was very peaceful, all things considered, criminally. I mean, we've always had low life or crime around Coos County and in the rural areas. And even in the cities, we never really had bad crime, just minor petty crime, drug-related stuff, random acts of violence. But now we see the wheels have totally gone off the wagon here. We have had a situation, I don't know what else to call it, but anarcho-tyranny, where the law-abiding are treated like criminals, and the criminals are treated as a privileged class, and that's because they're a fifth column for the Democrats in this state. And I'm not going to just beat up on the Democrats. I mean, I'm going to beat the hell out of the Republicans in just a few minutes. But, nobody wants this. Most Democrats don't want this. And the only reason we have this is because there is a money washing operation in this state in the poverty industrial complex. Yeah. It's really, this money isn't going to help poor people or homeless people. It's going to pay the college loans of PhDs and people with masters in administration that are running all these programs. It's really just reverse welfare that's supposed to be going to the poor, but really goes to the affluent.
We could sit here and talk on that all day, because even with the complexities of what's going on here in Coos County, without even going past the county to the legislature and the state, I think we could do an hour and a half to 2 hours just on Coos County as well, probably even more so. Wouldn't you think?
No doubt, man. We were the dumping ground between Portland and San Francisco. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. No other county dealt with what we dealt with. And I think, with all due respect to law enforcement, I think that their prestige has taken an immense hit. Yeah. And whether they want it to be this way or not, the perception has been very negative. Because we saw for 2 years these, I don't know how else to call it. I mean, there are people down on their luck, and some of them are homeless. But I'm talking about mentally ill bums who have their ass out in the street. I went to Portland to go to the convention that Mr. Burke also participated in that was supposedly illegitimate. I don't know why he was there participating under these bylaws if they were illegitimate. But going to the convention, we carpooled from Portland. I went to a McDonald's I used to go to when I'd visit friends up there. That's where we met, is on West Burnside, and there were junkies passed out at 10 in the morning, all on the front porch. This is not the public sidewalk, the front porch,
Right.
private property. And it smells like the barn at the Coos County Fair. There were bums pulling their genitals out, just pissing in the street. Just
Yeah.
a complete disgrace.
Well, I guess they did you a favor, all of us a favor. You don't need cable now or TV. You could just sit outside and watch what's going on out there for entertainment. It's you don't need a dinner show, and there's no service charge other than what you pay in taxes. So, but I did want to bring you on to talk about the homeless. We've got another situation going on, and this is why it was important to me. And I told Richard, who is also part of the Libertarian Party, he's been in there, he's part of the old guard. And one of the things I told him why this was so important is that the Libertarian Party plays an integral part in the party system. And you'll hear a lot of the Democrats and the Republicans always say, our system is a two-party system. Well, no, nowhere in any of the founding documents does it even construct a two-party system. In fact, the founding fathers were opposed to political parties. So if you are going to have political parties, and you're going to have two major ones like the Democrats and the Republicans, who always seem the major ones, and there's reasons for that. And I think it's discrimination against the minor parties. But since you're going to have a system like that, to me, it's very important to have other parties, third, fourth, fifth, sixth different parties, to keep the main parties going in the right direction. Unfortunately, it pulls the left or the Democrats far to the left, but it also pulls the Republicans to the right, where if there wasn't a Libertarian or Constitution Party pulling the Republicans to the right, I think in Oregon, you would have a Republican Party that is so just exactly like the Democrat Party. There would be no reason to vote because you've got two of the same people running. And what do you think on that?
No, I think exactly. I think exactly like you do. We need to have vibrant parties. No other country that calls itself a democracy has a system as slanted and as tilted as ours. We may have revolutionized representative democracy, Republican democracy, whatever you want to call it, after the foundation of this country. But after that, we really haven't evolved much since. As a matter of fact, we've gone in the wrong direction. We've created tiered systems of what parties are. Other countries don't do that. They don't have minor parties and major parties. They just have an objective criteria. If you do this, you're a party and you receive all the same privileges. And you don't see stuff like this that we're dealing with here, this legal and administrative harassment of the Libertarian Party by the Republicans and of course, Mr. Burke, and I'll get into Mr. Burke in a minute. But I was going to say that other countries don't sue other parties off the ballot. They don't do it. In Great Britain, they would laugh you out of court for that. They would say, why are you trying to disenfranchise a party? In Canada, they'd laugh you out. Australia, New Zealand. For all their faults that they have in their politics, at least they're pretty good about how to get on the ballot. You need 25 signatures and $50 if you're an independent. Now, in Oregon, Betsy Johnson had to spend $2 million to get on the ballot? I mean, it's absurd. It's a complete absurdity. But our job, especially since we don't have things like instant runoff voting and multi-member districts, our job in the first past the post system, with all the things we have rigged against us that other countries don't, is to keep the two parties honest. We exercise our political voice from the periphery, from the edges.
Yeah.
And that's why I joined the third party movement, because I reached the conclusion that you can spin your wheels in a Republican primary all you want, or a Democratic primary. You're not going to get anywhere. Even if you win, you're going to be shunned by your party. You're going to deliver absolutely nothing. So what's a better approach? It's to scare the bastards, the crooks that are in there. And what scares them more than anything? Losing re-election.
Right.
And that's why the Republicans are out to get us is, they can say all they want about wanting to respect the Oregon election laws, which is so ludicrous, seeing as how their Columbia County chapter was selling hooch in violation of Oregon law.
That didn't come to a trial. I'm not sure if that was accurate there. I know they were selling hooch, but I don't think they were prosecuted or fined for any of
The
that.
OLCC, I think, fined them. I think they had a determinative ruling about a month and a half ago. So regardless of if anybody,
Okay.
I'm not saying anybody needs to be prosecuted. I think it's nonsense that they can't do that. But my point is, for a party so dedicated to the rules,
Right.
so dedicated to the rules that they have to try and get the government to police other parties, it's completely preposterous. It's crocodile tears, But no, that is the role of third parties. And my goal as chairman, since I've been in there for the last couple of months, has been to not be a lapdog for Republicans like the party often was under Mr. Burke, but to really sort of be driving them from the rear to make sure that they're actually representing the majority of Oregonians who do not approve of the Democratic Party. Because let's look at it. Tina Kotek didn't get a majority of the votes. Most of our people are opposed to this nonsense. And if we don't hold the Republicans accountable, there won't even be an opposition in this state, because they would be just like Lori DeReamer, my
Right.
old colleague from the Mayor's Association. They would just roll over and be a lapdog, because all they care about, every single one of them, no matter how much they say otherwise, it's all about election. It's all about winning and about money and power. That's what it's about.
And one of the reasons that I am so much wanting to have this discussion is because of this lady right here, Sonia Feintek. That's probably the wrong way of pronouncing her name. I'm not sure. But Feintesh. And, this is that right there is a great ad. Your rights are not for sale. And it shows her standing there with an AR. It's kind of reminds me of Kill Bill 3. She's a part of Kill Bill 3 here, and Bill is the Republican candidate and the Democrat candidate who are running in the same position she's running in. But I could never support DeReamer. Just her name alone signifies she's going to screw you over. And so I definitely am endorsing Sonia here, because I've talked to Sonia. I know Sonia, and through her deeds and through the way she speaks and what she says, I support her. And that's why I think the Libertarian Party is so important.
Oh, no doubt about it. She is a star in the making for the party. And I don't think she's going to just sit there and be a character on the periphery for years to come. I believe she'll hold office one day. And I think whether it's in this race, because you never know,
Right.
but she is going to be the determinative factor in this race. And I expect great things from her in the future.
So let me ask you, since I asked her when she was on, and we didn't get into the history or the bylaws. She covered it briefly. It was more really about her campaign and what her thoughts were. But I would ask you if the Republican Party is probably going to lose because of her candidacy. I doubt the Constitution gets usually much less than what the Libertarians do. The Libertarian would probably be the greater threat as the spoiler. And so that's why I believe this race here, it's CD5. This is the reason the Republicans are trying to get all of your candidates kicked off, because they claim the bylaws are not legitimate.
No, I think you're absolutely right. That in the 4th Congressional District, which they have delusions that Monique Despain is going to be competitive in that race. I just don't see it for all of Val Hoyle's faults.
Right.
Where she's vulnerable, Despain is not particularly strong, in my opinion. Also, that district, after redistricting, with having 2 university towns in it,
Yeah.
makes it very, very difficult for somebody on the right. Especially.
No, I don't think Monique Despain is going to win that race for several reasons. She's not a strong Republican. When she's out speaking to the people, she's squishy on many different issues. She's got a few kinks that she has. One, she doesn't like to be filmed in public. And to me, if you're a candidate, you don't like to be filmed, guess what? You probably shouldn't be a candidate. That throws up huge red flags for me. And the fact that, like you said, that this is a majority Democrat-held district, and Val Hoyle may actually get more kick from these college towns and from younger people and minorities because of her stance on marijuana alone and being supported by a marijuana dispensary. I mean, she's getting supported by that LaMota money. So I think there are going to be practical problems for Monique Despain.
Well, and it's the real issue she's going to be vulnerable on, Val Hoyle, is going to be the documents question regarding LaMota. And again, I think her response that basically if they want my private stuff, they should get a court order. I think most people probably would have that attitude to a certain degree.
Right.
And so I don't think that gives them much to work with. I also think the issue where she's particularly vulnerable is on the issue in the Middle East and on the Ukraine. And
Yes.
Miss Despain has her same positions, except for far more aggressive. So it's like, so where in the hell do you pick up the win here? Inflation? Right. Well, she's going to support the Trump tax cuts, which in many ways raise taxes on Oregonians and people with states with income taxes. And it's going to feed inflation because, let's be honest, I know a lot of people like President Trump, but the deficit didn't exactly go down on his watch. That's how you get inflation. It's the hidden tax of inflation, because politicians learned a long time ago it's easier to just print more money and make it less valuable and have that be a tax increase on people than taking the political hit of just raising taxes.
No, he's stronger on other parts of the economy than like you said. Most people don't even realize that the states that had an income tax the people who paid that income tax did take a hit from his tax bill back when he was president. You're absolutely correct on that. And the fact that nobody's talking about the deficit. You notice the president, I shouldn't say President Biden, Kamala and Trump both it's like it's the big elephant in the room. And to me, that should be the number one issue is we got a $37 trillion tax debt. And I'm not sure how we're going to pay that crap.
Well, it's funny because here's the problem. For all the stuff we talk about entitlements, they are a far smaller part of the budget annually than the $1 trillion we spend on all these wars.
Right.
I mean, we have been in perpetual warfare since 1945. I mean, it's unbelievable. And the world is more on fire now than it's been at since World War II. So I think the evidence for us maintaining this level of spending is clearly not in the U.S. interest. It's not in the world's interest. So whose interest is it? The politicians and their contributors.
That industrial complex they got to support. Yes.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it's yet another example. We wouldn't even be talking about inflation in the 5th District if it wasn't for Sonia. We wouldn't be talking about Ukraine or the issue with Israel and Palestine.
Right.
Because both nominees in that seat have identical positions, except for Lori might, Bynum might be a little more squeamish when she sees a school full of Palestinian kids blown up, but she'll still vote to give them the bombs if they promise to give them warm blankets afterwards. So, I mean, that's about the only real difference between the two. And, I would argue more than anything that, because one of Mr. Burke's key points was the party is not relevant right now because we don't have as much money as when he was in charge. And I would argue that we may have less money. We are more relevant now than we have ever been. We have never been a determining factor in a congressional race like this over significant policy issues, ever. And the fact of the matter is, they don't try and kick you off the ballot if you're not relevant. I would argue also the organization is not divided at all. There's Mr. Burke and a couple of his financial backers. But beyond that, the bad blood's over. We resolved all of it internally. And so, because I know you want to get to this, so I became vice chair of the Libertarian Party back in January. And I was particularly concerned about the direction of the organization vis-a-vis its finances and candidate support. So my goal was to try and see what we could do to turn that around. And my understanding was Richard had great relationships with all of these donors and so on and so forth. And so I figured, I should reach out to him because he had bad interactions with other people and other people did not want to deal with him. I said, I'll reach out to him and see what we can do to try and close this rift, because if he can help raise money for us, even if he takes a cut of what he raises, that's bringing something to the table. And it is true. Our bylaws as they are now have some provisions I'm not particularly fond of, such as requiring a mail-in ballot for our primaries and for ratifications of the bylaws. That's very expensive. At the same time, those bylaws, which, the dispute he brings up goes back to 2011. And I think it would be useful to pull up the document from Secretary of State Richardson now, because I wasn't there in 2011. I joined the party in 2021 after being a non-affiliated for several years, after having had my stints with the Democrats and Republicans, and I pretty much decided never to join a party again. But then I noticed the Libertarian Party was starting to sound like Ron Paul, a guy I have great respect for, on issues like inflation, on issues like protecting America's interests abroad by maybe taking care of ourselves at home and not trying to take care of so many other countries so much. Having a position on abortion that was more moderate than the Libertarian Party of Burke's era had, which basically we took it out of the platform altogether. Instead of having the pro-choice section, we've reached the conclusion that state affiliates and members ought to determine that out of their own conscience. And we also finally got tough on the border issue, which is, the open borders generation of libertarians, which Mr. Burke's faction represents in many ways, and the nominee he supported at convention, Chase Oliver, supports the idea of just a completely open border. I could not join the party under those circumstances, and yet they changed their position because, you can claim every American is a shareholder in this company, right? When people come in and dilute this company, they're really reducing our property value and our investiture in this country. And so there's a property right we have in maintaining a border and having an orderly process for immigration. And so the party made those changes. I came in, I got involved. And then Rowe's the vice chair, reached out to Richard, and he told me all about the bylaws thing from his perspective, much of which you heard on your show on Friday night. And, not having any additional evidence to counterbalance it, I made sure to be equivocal in my language, because you never commit to something half-cocked.
Right.
It's sort of like, wow, that sort of sounds like you might have a point there, Richard. Let me look into this. And as things developed, the organization still had some challenges in fundraising. We were, we had lost some key volunteers due to the economic uncertainties we live in. Their time just could not be dedicated to the party the way it used to be. One of the harsh realities of the third party movement is we don't have paid staff. We do the things we do because we care. And I was going to say that through a number of events, I became state party chairman. The chairman resigned, and I assumed the office. And we did not have the money to run a primary election. This is very clear, to do the mail-in vote. So a convention was noticed by my predecessor as chair in Rowe, Oregon, for July 13th. And we did not get a quorum at that convention, as you might assume, with 110-degree weather in Rowe, Oregon, out in the middle of nowhere. But again, that had been committed to. I had to follow through. Once you notice the convention, you have to honor it. We did not make quorum. And so the bylaws, and despite what Mr. Burke says in his complaint to the Secretary of State, the bylaws do allow us to nominate from the board of directors registered libertarians if the primary doesn't yield any nominees. He's saying that the convention being held in lieu of the primary means we didn't have a primary, there weren't any nominees, and so forth, which in many ways undercuts his argument, because if you don't have a primary, it didn't yield any nominees.
Right.
So the convention, because we wanted to include the input of our members, was held, and we didn't make quorum. And so the board then nominated, as is outlined in our bylaws. But Mr. Burke's real complaint comes at the heart of it. That was his most recent complaint. which I believe has no legs whatsoever. But the claim he always likes to go back to is 2011, 2013. You hear numerous dates all the time from him. And when that happened, and again, I can't attest to all the facts of it because I wasn't there, they had a 60-day window. And the reason we have these windows for appeals is because if you leave it open indefinitely, you'll clog up the whole system. You'll clog up the courts, you'll clog up the administrative hearings and complaints process, and it basically results in fishing for eventually getting a decision that goes your way. And that's really what this is all about. At its heart, this is what it's all about, because Mr. Burke lost in 2011. He lost when the LNC recognized our faction, which most recently it did, and that is still in force. That's why Richard had to be a delegate from this state party affiliate to be at the national convention. I would also point out that, Richard says we are operating under fraudulent bylaws and everything we do is illegitimate. Well, then why was he a delegate at the last two conventions? Why did he take our votes in the LNC Region 1?
Matt, that would have been a great question. And I didn't think of asking that question because, and I should have caught on, because what he was saying is that, I asked him, well, Richard, why don't you run for office, become a chair? And as chair, you can do what you want to do as far as getting the next convention to vote on which bylaws are legitimate. And he says, yeah, but which bylaws would I work under? Which bylaws would I be elected under? And it seems like he was concerned about it for running for chair. But as you said, you are correct. He had talked about participating in the meetings. And if he participated in the meetings in any capacity, official capacity, then he was already working under the bylaws that are the new bylaws that he says are illegitimate. Am I wrong there? Or is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
And again, look, Richard's a nice enough fella. I know he repeatedly said, I hope we're still friends. I don't have personal animus towards him.
Right.
I think my frustration is that he repeatedly told me, and I have this in writing, that he would not file a complaint, that as far as he was concerned, this was dealt with. But he had heard through his Republican sources that they were going to file a complaint. And that's why he said, that's why I needed to, without any basis under the bylaws or any basis under Oregon election law, unilaterally submit his old bylaws to the Secretary of State, keep it secret from my board for 60 days so that nobody could appeal it, and then reinstate his bylaws, essentially doing the exact same thing he said the other side did to him 13 years ago. And, I saw during your program, because I watched the show after, he said, I don't know which bylaws I'd be operating under. Well, he could easily run for chair himself. I don't know if he could get elected. My guess is probably not. But, let's see him, because as chair, he could just submit those, right? If he believes it's legal. Why does he want somebody else to do it? Why can't he do his own dirty work?
Well, Matt, that's kind of why I needed you here on the show Friday. And I still don't understand why you didn't want to come on to talk with him the way we had set it up, because he wanted to go after you. You wanted to go after him. I got it situated where you were after him. The only difference was I was going to allow rebuttal face to face with both of you on the air at the same time.
Well, I think part of it was that after our last meeting we had in July at the LPO board meeting, Richard became belligerent, spoke over folks multiple times, spoke over me, was just generally very unpleasant. And he came off very negatively, and I'm not going to go into details at the convention, for his personal, the way he conducted himself.
Right.
And knowing that, and knowing that this could result in potential litigation, I had no interest. And I don't think it was in the party's interests or your audience's interest to have a dumpster fire on your program. I think this is better, because the fact of the matter is, his case, he has to go first. if he were granted an audience with the Secretary of State in the administrative process,
Right.
they have to make their case first. That's how
In
the
a court of law, he would have to go first. He's the plaintiff. You're the defendant. So he would still,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And so my attitude was this: if he wants to do this now, we can do it on the show, and he can go first, and I'll rebut, because that's how I would have to represent the party, or we would have to represent the party with a counsel in court or through the administrative process.
Right.
And since this could go to litigation, I figured it might be best to just stick to that. Given as how he points out, we just have we don't have as much money as they used to have on his watch. I didn't want to risk the party's finances just because I wanted to rebut him right there. Because, look, I would have loved to have been on there. I just, at the same time, me, I'm not afraid of a fight.
Oh, no, that's why I think it would have been incredibly interesting to have both of you on, because I'll be honest with you, Richard is one of those who most people cannot match his ability to debate or make an argument and then may have a counter argument to his logical sounding argument. And you're one of the few people, Matt, who I would put up there in Richard's class to be able to refute and give a rebuttal on all of this. But now that you're mentioning the litigation, that's exactly what he was talking about, was the fear of litigation. And that just ticks me off, because we're fighting each other. And I shouldn't say we, but the party is fighting each other when there's just so much energy and time that can be done doing so many better things.
And I would point out, nobody else is pushing for this. Nobody. It's considered settled. After this letter, which we're going to look at here from the Secretary of State, the late Dennis Richardson, I would argue one of the few very good secretaries of state in my lifetime,
right,
makes a very lawyerly decision here, and it's based in sound legal judgment. I don't know if you can close up on it or not, but
that's as close up as I can get. I have it here so that I can read it if you'd like.
Well, I mean, I think that the key bullet points are the important part. And look, he said he believes, and I'll summarize it, I suppose, just for the sake of simplicity, which is, it says there was a dispute back from March of 2011, and that both groups claimed to have control of the organization and the other one was in the wrong. The Secretary of State at the time had to make a determinative decision on who could file the nominees, because under Oregon law, if they didn't recognize one of these, the Libertarian Party would have been disenfranchised. There would have been no nominees. And so, since the 60-day appeal of the action in 2011 had already closed, the Secretary of State made the only ruling they could, which is that they recognized the one that was in force at the time, the bylaws that were in force and the board that was in force. Of course, years of litigation followed. They spent apparently $250,000 on this nonsense.
Oh,
just complete. Think about, if I could get 10 grand to Sonia,
right,
she could just shake up this race even bigger.
Yeah,
but they don't have time for that. These factions, and again, the other faction was just as belligerent, I'm sure, except for they were right under the law as it was at that point. And so there were decisions brought, or cases brought, and grievances to the Libertarian National Committee, which again for Oregon law is completely irrelevant. That's a determining factor of affiliate recognition. That has nothing to do with Oregon ballot access. And even in that hearing, the most recent determination by them, and that's why they seat our delegation at the LNC. That's why I represent, as a chair, part of the organization in the party Region 1, the LNC Region 1,
right,
as a state party. It's because they recognize us. We're legitimate. I just got asked if I wanted to be on an LNC committee last week for campaign support. And the fact of the matter is, as Richardson points out, the most recent ruling acknowledged the bylaws that were in force are in force now, and the leadership whose lineage has led to the present. The other thing he points out is that he determined that both sides may have made mistakes, and the simple solution wasn't to ask the government to decide who was going to be the winner, because their hands were tied. And as he rightfully points out, Oregon law says they aren't supposed to be the political party police.
And that's what the letter says, like you're saying, yes.
And the closing part's the best part, though. I think you might want to get that last part on the bottom, the next page.
It says under two previous you talk about number 5?
No, I'm talking about after that.
This is the important part. It says, in consideration of the above factors, I have concluded, being Dennis Richardson, that it would be improper to reverse the existing precedent. It is significant to note that the current bylaws of the group this office recognizes as the Libertarian Party of Oregon allow for full participation by members of the other group. If they have continuing disagreements with the recognized leaders of the party, they are welcome to vote for other candidates or even run for office themselves. It is my sincere hope that the Libertarian Party of Oregon can move on as a unified party with much to contribute to public discourse in our state. And I couldn't agree more with Dennis Richardson. I wish we could get past this because I think this is nonsense. I think this is incredible nonsense. And Richard didn't present. He talked about the letter, but he didn't present certain parts of this letter that to me overrides the court, because you guys did go to the Court of Appeals, and that's what he was showing. And even the Court of Appeals was only asking the question, does the state Secretary of State have the right, the authority to interfere with county bylaws? And they said no in the Court of Appeals.
And the Court of Appeals, because he hangs his hat on a little bit of dicta, a footnote in the Court of Appeals hearing, that he believes assigns guilt for violation of the bylaws in 2011. Well, regardless of how he interprets that, the reason it's not in the proper opinion and it's in a footnote is because it has no bearing on the decision whatsoever, because the 60 days closed. And so it's really just an observation. It's as the Marion County Circuit Judge explained in 2020 when Joe Ray Perkins and Burke and Company, or at least some of Burke's pals, tried to disenfranchise us in 2020, he said, there's a reason why they tell you in law school not to read the footnotes in these rulings, and it's because it's there for absolutely nothing except for, the inclination of a judge to say how smart they are, while having no bearance on the decision or the law whatsoever.
Correct.
And so that's, I would also add, by the way, that's the basis. Well, I'm not even going to get into that. I will say, though, that I engaged Richard because I wanted to try and include him back in the party. I thought he could help us with fundraising. And all I ever heard was this, you need to send in this letter. And I told him I'm not going to unilaterally do that. I want the board to be put into this decision. And I would argue that knowing all the facts we have from Secretary of State Richardson, the Court of Appeals, and the Marion County Circuit Court, even if the board directed me to do that, and I would honor it, I think it would have been the wrong decision to do what Mr. Burke wants to do, because I think that opens us up to far more legal risk of saying we violated the bylaws, because these bylaws have been deemed kosher, and then we would be unilaterally changing it. And I think many party members would rightfully be irritated and aggrieved by that without doing it with their knowledge. And so I said, how about we reconstitute the judicial committee within the state party? They can analyze this. You make your best case, and we go from there. That wasn't good enough. I said, okay, make your case to the board, and I'll follow what they do. That wasn't good enough. And despite his promises to me in writing that he would not do what he did it. And I would argue, when we look at all this and we look at the decisions from the Court of Appeals and the Marion County Circuit Court, that he really doesn't have much basis under the law for his position. I would look, our bylaws have areas that I would love to fix,
right?
But they're not illegitimate. It's been deemed, that's been the decision of the LNC. It's been the decision of the Secretary of State, of the Oregon Court of Appeals, and the Marion County Circuit Court. Literally, if this were a best of 7 series in baseball, he would have been shut out. And, we hear about we need to bring the party together. The party's unified. The only people who are aggrieved are the old open borders, socially libertine but not particularly economically conservative libertarians. You know, the old Gen Xers who want to smoke pot and play with guns, but
Hey, leave me out of this argument,
hey,
okay?
there's nothing wrong with pot or guns, all right? But
I don't do them at the same time. Just remember that.
but standing with Ukraine and wanting to send our money all over the world, I don't know how in the hell you can claim to be a libertarian and support that. But regardless, though, no, I believe maybe he believes what he's doing is right. I'm not going to cast aspersions on his motivations. I think it does warrant acknowledging, though. He's on the Oregon Ethics Commission. He is an appointee of the House Republican Caucus. They picked him, and his business does a lot of business with the Republicans. I'm not casting aspersions. It's just maybe there's a situation of it's almost like an echo chamber. I'm not even going to cast negative aspersions on his motivations, but maybe he's living in an echo chamber and really believes he has merit under the law for this. But let's say he wins. Let's say for a second he wins, and our people get kicked off the ballot, and his bylaws are put back in there. Do you think that's going to unify the party? I think there's going to be a lot of pissed off people.
No.
It'll just reopen it. And I said, let's come together. Let's reform these bylaws at the convention, bring all the wings together, show we have competent, capable people. We can show after Sonia is the determinative factor in the 5th district that we can get results. And then we can take his professional fundraising prowess and we can all work together to build the party.
Now he says that your bylaws right now, and this is because I asked him the difference between the bylaws, and we didn't get into the Ukraine, we didn't get into the open borders, and I'm not an open border libertarian, and that was one of the divides between me and the party. And I'm also a Ron Paul on foreign policy, not isolation but non-intervention. And so one of the things that he kept saying is that your new bylaws, that the bylaws that were put in, and
they're not new, are they? They're not new.
They're not new. This is going back to 2013. So really, we're arguing 10 plus years on this stuff. But the bylaws from 2013, it would be 2013. I asked him what the difference was, and he said that it locked you into not being able to be activists. That what did he call it? You were candidate placemats. That's all you are, is to put candidates on the ballot. That there really was no maneuvering with the party itself.
Well,
I didn't understand that, but I wanted to hear your side of that.
So the people who passed the 2011 bylaws that Burke hates so much, they did have a provision that the party couldn't take policy positions, that really the candidates themselves ought to be the spokesman for the party as opposed to, a board of directors. And while I disagree with that logic, I can understand where they were coming from, because basically their position was a small clique of people were determining the values of all libertarians in the state, which really was not representative of the values of the party. And so they thought, let's try and nip this in the bud. And I think it was a strategic mistake, but they did it. What Richard fails to mention is that we reformed the bylaws. And we had a vote. It was mailed to every Oregon registered libertarian. And by the way, we've ratified the bylaws like this repeatedly, which I would argue is far more legitimate than having a convention with like 50 people at it.
With only a certain amount of people who could show up to these conventions, you limit the greater party overall, because then people who are just members can't vote.
And when they passed these bylaws, people weren't as technically savvy. We've come a long way, especially at COVID rapidly advanced like tech participation. So we had the mail-in ballot. We have a bylaws amendment to go strictly to electronic voting, but we need the funds to hold the last ratifying election. I was going to say, and those funds haven't come in because they've been gobbled up by stupid, nonsensical disputes like this. But we did reform the bylaws to have a policy committee elected from the members that decides these things. I was one of the initial members of that board. And we embraced the Ron Paul message, which I know Richard doesn't like. and we adopted the national party platform, which is it has imperfections, but it's very positive on foreign policy, on immigration, on several issues that had been dividing the party. It created language that was amenable to both sides. And that greatly allowed us to put aside previous disputes in the party. And so the idea that we couldn't take positions is just factually inaccurate. We take positions all the time. What I would also say, though, is that, and I have pointed this out again, but I think it bears repeating, is that if we're a fraudulent organization, why was he participating? Why did he participate in our conventions? Why did he accept being a delegate to the national convention? Because really, I mean, essentially, he would be complicit in a fraud as an illegitimate delegate to the national convention if he were doing this. And I'm not saying that because it wouldn't be a fraud. He did it because we were the legitimate party affiliate operating under legitimate, though imperfect, but legitimate bylaws. And the only way he could be a delegate was to be elected through us. Just like the only way he could represent part as an alternate Region 1 was with our support. He would not have had any standing for that position if that were not the case. So I think legally speaking, it's weak. I think the idea that it would unify the party is completely absurd. It would tear up the party that is unified. The only problem we have is a limited amount of resources. Part of the reason we aren't raising money the way we used to is because the open borders types, the partial birth abortion types, the people who want to transition little children, and the people who think, killing 60,000 innocent people who aren't war participants, who aren't belligerents, is good. And we don't get their money anymore. But honestly, we don't need it. We're far more effective now than we were when we had all that money. I would rather have a free hand with $5,000 and people who believe in the message than have, I think you said, well, we had $150,000 one year. Of course, most of that was given back to the LNC. He doesn't mention that because it was for holding the national convention here back in, I think it was 2011 or something like that, 2006. I can't even remember. But the fact of the matter is, I would rather have $5,000 in a free hand and good people I can trust than have $250,000 and be the lapdogs of the Oregon Republican Party. And I think that's our attitude.
Well, and I think that's kind of what they're pissed off about. And I want you to tell me the Republican Party obviously think there's a weakness and there's a legitimacy to the argument that your bylaws are not correct, which I guess they haven't read the Richardson letter, or even the Court of Appeal decisions. But the Republican Party is coming at you, which I even told Richard, I don't think it even matters that they filed a complaint because I don't think the Secretary of State is going to decide on party bylaws. And the Court of Appeals seems to agree with that opinion. So why do you think the Republican Party, is going after the Libertarians when all it does is it makes them look like bullies? It gives you free press. And in the end, your candidates are still going to be on the ballot at the end of the day, is what I believe.
Well, one, it's because the Oregon Republican Party is a stupid organization. I mean, let's be honest. The only thing they have less than ethics are brain cells.
I couldn't argue with you at all about that. I've been working with the Republicans for the last 6 months, and let me tell you, morons come to mind. A lot of morons in the leadership of the Republican Party.
And I'm not going to cast any aspersions on their attorney. I would think if he did not do his due diligence and find the Richardson letter, which that can be found all over the place, and was reported on at the time, I would be shocked if he didn't know about all of these things. I think they were just honestly desperate. I think that they can feel the 5th district slipping away. They know any chance they had in the 5th is gone with our 4th is gone with our participation, which again, I don't think they had a chance there to begin with. And in the past, when they tried to screw with the party, we kept our mouths shut and didn't do anything about it. But the difference is there's a new group of people in charge. And my outlook was, we got nothing to hide. We got nothing to be ashamed of. We need to be screaming this from the rooftops.
Right.
Because They're doing this because they think we would keep our mouths shut and just, with lack of a better word, eat crow on this, I suppose.
Yeah, they thought you were going to take it into shorts. That's what they thought, and you were going to take it and not do anything about it. And they don't like it. Let me tell you, this Republican Party, the people in charge, if you do anything, criticize them, the least criticisms, they will retaliate. So I can only imagine what they thought about you taking away one of their districts, your party, I should say.
Well, and again, we didn't take anything away.
Right, right.
They've cost themselves this. If Lori DeReamer would have not been for giving $8 billion to Intel to fire what'll probably amount to about 800 Oregonians. Remember, that was going to create all them jobs. Remember, we're going to $8 billion to the tech companies, to the chip makers. And as a matter of fact, she wrote a letter begging the Commerce Secretary to come out and give them more money.
Yeah.
This was the same week they announced the firing of 800 some odd Oregonians. It's completely disgusting. And the question is why? I think it's pretty obvious. They got deep pockets. But the fact is, she supported continuing the brutality that was going on in Yemen. She supports what's going on in occupied Palestine. She supports the Ukraine effort, which has pushed the globe closer to nuclear war far closer than we ever got under the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's funny when the Russians want to put missiles in Cuba, that's an outrage. We want to put missiles right on their border. And
right.
This is a fight for democracy for a country where they censor the press, jail the opposition, and don't even hold elections. Say what you want about Putin. He had an election. Zelensky hasn't.
Zelensky hasn't, but the way he came into power was really through a color revolution that was constructed by the U.S.
But instead of addressing these issues, they thought, they always eat our crap. They always just basically they try and hide and roll over in a fetal position when they get messed with. They thought about the Libertarian Party. My attitude was we've done nothing wrong. And this is a consequential election in a consequential a time in American history. And we owe it to our members to fight like hell to make sure their voices are represented.
Right.
So that's, the Republicans didn't like it. I talked to the press. They didn't like that. I've called them out, frankly, for their outright hypocrisy. And it is so transparent what they're trying to do. And they phrase it under this idea of, we think it's just so important you follow Oregon election law, which, all right, they have followed Oregon election law. And again, I would say for anybody from any side of this dispute or any other dispute from the past in the Libertarian Party, you are welcome in this party. I would love to have more member engagement and that your views can get a fair hearing. And we will greatly include you at convention and in the bylaws process if you want to reform the bylaws. We have a judicial committee set up. If you disagree with one of our decisions, you can appeal to them. And we made sure that the judicial committee members, none of them are candidates for office, and none of them sit on the board of directors right now, to make sure that they are completely independent from us. And that is still not good enough for Burke and his GOP supporters.
So most of the people who are on the board right now probably haven't been on the board since 2011. So most of them have been living under the bylaws that are being contested right now. This is all they've ever known, being in the party. And to me, at a certain point, doesn't that set precedents for the bylaws themselves?
Well, if you respect any portion of American law, it should, because let's look at the U.S. Constitution. It was adopted in an extra legal way because the Articles of Confederation said that all 13 colonies or all 13 states had to agree. It had to be unanimous consent to change the rules. What did the Constitution say? 11 out of 13 is all we need. And so have we said that the Constitution is illegitimate based off of that? That's an absurdity. It's an absurdity. There's a point where you have to let it lie and you have to let it go, because there would be far more we could do working together than doing the Republicans' dirty work for them and tearing each other apart.
I agree with you. I got to pull on a sponsor here. I've got to do a quick talk to what's going on with Tim over at Tom and Gigs, and then I'm going to keep you on the screen. But when I bring him on, we'll do a little bit about Tom and Gigs, and then when you come back, I want to talk about the Republican Party being controlled opposition. You up for that?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, just stay right there. And in fact, you can join the conversation. I'm just pulling Tim onto the screen. Hey, man.
There we are, man. I got a few minutes to break here, so we'll make her quick and sweet at the same time, I guess. But
What
anyway,
are you doing, man?
I'm working on my truck. It's not running right now. I gotta. I wish I could find a good mechanic.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah,
And then hire that guy.
yeah. But yeah, it's always a challenge. Mechanics' cars break down too. So that's just the way it is. Nuts and bolts and all that stuff. But no, we're doing a lot of good stuff. Josh so far today's been a good Monday, and a lot of people coming in about the RC cars, and Austin's back there doing a bunch of suspension on seems like Chevy pickup week. I think 3 racks were full of Chevy pickups. It's just kind of funny how that works. But anyway, they're all busy back there getting stuff done, doing a little air conditioning work. Brad is, and just kind of a little bit of everything, I guess you could say. I did a little bit of exhaust work today, and we're on the radio now and kicking back here and having fun. So anyway, I'm glad I could finally be on for once. But yeah, I haven't been on. I just heard the Constitution, and they don't really recognize that as a legitimate document anymore, even though if we could make some hemp out of it, we could hang a bunch of folks, and that'd be the greatest thing to do. Treat them trees in this, it'd be fun. We'll plant them in the ground or something, let just their head stick up so they can get ate by ants and all kinds of, pour some honey on their head or something. I don't know.
Wow, you're going old school today. You're going old school.
I know. I'm just tired of the freebie stuff. I was reading a thing here. It's a good quote, actually, of Thomas Sowell. And he says, "This is the age of complaining classes, whether they are lawyers, community activists, radical feminists, race hustlers, or other squeaking wheels looking for oil. In other words, looking for something for free. No society has ever thrived because it had a large growing class of parasites living off those who produce, like you and I, the producers. I'm sick of these parasites. I'm sick of watching this crap walk around the street. Most of them could hold a job if they wanted to. Even our elected officials, they're not doing their jam job. They're just a parasite monetarily upon our system. They're not doing the people's bidding. They're not listening to you and I. And I haven't been at the meetings like you have, and that other gentleman on here probably been there. They don't listen to nothing. It's in one ear and out the other. Could care less. It's amazing before they get voted in how they're just gung ho, and all of a sudden they just sit on their dead butt and do a damn thing. So I'm tired of guys like that, and hopefully we can get them out of office, get some new guys in there. But yeah, we need to get back to our roots and our Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And these people are trying to silence your free speech like commie law. It's not camel, it's commie law, the POSB yacht. And hopefully we can send her home packing too. And anyway, I just appreciate you guys being on and keeping up the good work. And I wasn't really geared up to do it, but I'm all for the Great Idaho thing too. I think that's good. Just go from Salem up and about probably Bend over west, and then the rest of it, let's not give Idaho a chance. But anyway, I appreciate you guys, and keep up the good work. We'll try to do the same. Give us a call down here at the shop, 541-888-4660, and 135 South Shoneman here in Coos Bay. And always appreciate being on and seeing you, and keep up the good work. And I'll listen to the rest of your show if I can. And adios, amigos.
Adios, amigos. Have a good one, Tim.
God bless America, brother.
God bless America. All right. And that was Tim from Tom and Gigs. I always enjoy hearing from him. Matt, so we were going to talk about the Republican Party, and I'm starting, I want to hear your side of this, because I agree with you somewhat. They're nothing but political controlled opposition. you go ahead and speak on it if you would.
Well, I think we hear the term controlled opposition a lot, and I think it might be useful for the audience to, pin down what do we mean by that.
Please.
And the term controlled opposition, at least I believe the one we're referring to, is from the old Soviet Union, where basically they would allow for divergent political movements while at the same time making sure they could do absolutely nothing to change the status quo. So they got the PR of claiming they were democratizing and including input, while at the same time only allowing those who they either directly controlled or could directly make sure were completely ineffective were the only ones allowed to participate in the process. And I think no better definition of the Oregon Republican Party exists. They literally only exist to basically carry water for corporate welfare, and they give some lip service on guns and on taxes. But when it comes down to brass tacks, I find it so amusing that the Republican Party nationally and in Oregon has latched onto this tampon Tim thing with Tim Walz, when every Oregon Republican in the legislature almost voted to put tampons in the boys' room.
Yeah, voted to put tampons in the boys' room. I've been going off on that all since they've been bringing that up about the vice president pick by Kamala there. The Republicans have been going crazy on that, but I noticed a lot of the Oregon Republicans kind of kept their mouths shut because they didn't want to get bitch slapped with reality of the fact of what you just said.
Well, the thing is, I mean, that issue is one of the more transparent of their flagrant lies and dishonest tactics. Because what did they say? First, that wasn't in the bill, they said. Then folks like you and me read the bill and saw it was in the bill. Then they go, well, they must have done it while we weren't at committee. Then we verify the guys were at committee and that they participated in the committee and were clearly aware. And then the other response is, well, we just didn't read the bill. Well, So basically you're a liar or you're an incompetent. And that's really pretty much your options of Republican legislators.
Right.
They're either liars or they're incompetent. I can't think of a single member of that assembly, a single member from any party that is actually worth their salt. That when it comes down to brass tacks, they take a stand for the people over the special interests. And that's, partly why they're obsessed with making sure, because we have a phony ranked choice voting referral on the ballot. They say, oh, it's going to be ranked choice voting. It'll end spoilers. We'll give a fair chance to everybody. Well, the problem is the one office that is exempt from ranked choice voting is the Oregon legislature. So basically, their ranked choice voting proposal will make third parties toothless in the big races like Sonia's, where we can't be can't cost them with a few percentage points. And the office which it would help us most at to win, the legislature, they exempt us from. It is, the Republicans claim they oppose this. And maybe they're sincere in this because they know the only way they're ever going to win with the current kind of leadership they have is with left-wing third parties sucking away a certain amount of votes. Because as it is right now, they have no platform or policy positions that a majority of Oregonians could get behind. I mean, the fact that they lost in 2022 is for the governor's office is one of the most stunning examples of political incompetence in modern political history in the Northwest, because our cities were literally homeless camps.
Yeah.
Not just the big cities, the small cities.
Right.
Violent crime was up. Quality of living was down. And what did the Republicans push? We're going to give more money to the chip makers. We're going to give more money to housing developers, which, whether you believe that's a good idea or not, just giving the money to a private group to do with as they please probably is going to yield less benefit than just having the government do it directly. I mean, whether you
just
agree
give
with
the money away, right? And look who they picked. They picked Drazen. I think Drazen was weak right from the starting gate, and I don't think she ever had a chance in hell.
And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, she became leader of the Republican House caucus because the business lobby decided that their interests weren't being represented well enough by her predecessor, and they conducted a coup. Maybe that's why these Republicans support the Ukraine so much. They get installed in a very similar capacity. You just have a phony coup being backed by somebody with deep pockets and resources. And, the Republican Party's mantra is, yeah, we're just a little bit less bad than the Democrats.
I know. We don't suck as much as the other guys.
It's better.
You can't win on that.
It's so much better, when you're getting screwed by a guy who has elephants on his socks than if you are from a guy who has a donkey on his.
Right.
It's nonsense. And they use this nonsense to keep the folks divided and not thinking and not wondering why is there a controlled opposition to begin with. And it's because the folks who control this state, folks with deep pockets, and this is not just left-wing groups, by the way, they like this. They like the fact that, relatively speaking, the wealthiest folks in Oregon, and I'm not trying to sound like a socialist here, but through tax loopholes and other things, we have a very lousy tax code for people who work. We have a decent tax code for people who invest. And so they like having low wages. They like having illegal immigrants to further drive down wages. They like having their fun little environment to play in. So we can't build new housing for all these people.
Right.
And they like, they've created an environment where they don't want to pay to deal with the homeless or the mentally ill. So what do? They just dump them in our neighborhoods. They dump them there because it's amazing. I noticed that there weren't a lot of bums in rich neighborhoods. Did you notice that?
I did notice that. In fact, that's very true about pretty much any city in Oregon. You go to the wealthy neighborhoods, and I know this because I got having to go from one place in Portland to another place. I went through this very ritzy neighborhood. I'm talking mansions. These were just beautiful houses sprawling out everywhere, and not a homeless person or a shopping cart to be found. The streets were beautiful. It was amazing, Matt.
It's amazing you can somehow police there.
Yeah.
You can maintain it there. And that's really what the Republican Party of Oregon represents. That sort of, country club, upper crust, they don't care about tampons in the boys' rooms because their kids aren't going to those schools.
Right.
They don't give a shit. Sorry, excuse my language, but
no, you can that's perfectly fine on the podcast.
I didn't know if you had a rule there though for this.
No rules here.
But it's nonsensical, and they want to basically fire us. Oh, well, they're gonna allow transgender guys to beat the piss out of women in sports. We won't allow that. No, what'll happen is a federal judge from the Ninth Circuit will say that you have to do it. And then the Republicans will go, well, we have to follow the legal process, And so that is by definition what controlled opposition is. That you put up a phony protest, you rile your people up to make them feel like they're getting heard, and you deliver absolutely nothing and cave to the mechanisms of the establishment. And that is clearly what the Republican Party of Oregon is. Now, let's think about it. Where are they different than the Democrats? They stand with Ukraine. They stand with what's going on in occupied Palestine. They want to spend more money for business subsidies. They had 4 years and they had the Congress for 2 of them. Nothing happened on the border. And again, I don't want to federalize it. Let's look at the state. They couldn't protect our Second Amendment rights. They couldn't maintain solidarity to do that. They didn't stand up to protect families. This is really a red line for me. When the state passed a law saying they can take your kid away if he wants to be a transgender and you don't support it. You don't support your child being permanently altered. I'm not even going to make a judgment on this thing. I think it's silly though that, hey, you can't get a tattoo. You can't buy a beer
or a driver's license or vote.
Literally, they want kids to ride in the back seat now, I think until they're like 13 and something.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious. But that same kid it's so fragile, he can't be in the front seat. We can pump him up full of very questionable drugs and alter this person. And the fact that the Republicans could not maintain solidarity on the most sacred connection in the world between a parent and their child tells you this party delivers absolutely nothing.
Yep.
The Republican Party delivers absolutely nothing. And I'm not delusional. I don't think we're going to win a bunch of races this November. I mean, we may pick up a few nonpartisan seats, and I think we're going to overperform. But I would rather be doing what we're doing here, because we've tried to reason with them in the policy arguments. They don't care.
Right.
The only thing these punks care about is re-election and money. That's all they care about. No matter how much they talk about the unborn or about the sanctity of the family or about law and order, we've seen their law and order. Let's look at Republican states even. They don't have the bum issue. They didn't have the bum issue under control. They respected the bogus decision of the courts. They should have frankly invoked nullification and said that their policing power as a state was paramount. And what did they do? They rolled over. The commissar said, you can't do it. And these are the guys who want to kick us off the ballot. Notice, they're doing the Democrats' dirty work for them.
I know they're doing the dirty work for them. And here's the thing. Once their guys get into office, they don't even follow their own platform. They don't bylaws, screw the bylaws. They don't even follow their own platform, man. And it's really not that difficult. And of course, they'll look you straight in the eye and say, well, the platform is just a suggestion. Well, I guess the bylaws are just a suggestion until other party who might cost you an election decides to take that as just a suggestion. So I don't know. It's just a little screwed up to me.
Well, it reminds me, there's a very popular meme for people who are like gamers. I'm not really a gamer, but I saw this meme and it really stuck with me, it was a news clip of a company saying, we really don't think you own our games when you buy them. And then it has a little thought bubble over the guy's head standing at his computer reading this, or sitting at his computer reading this. And it goes, well, if I can't own it, I guess I can't steal it. And it shows him going to a torrenting website to steal it. It's what's good. That's part of why our country's falling apart, to be perfectly frank.
Yep.
It's the idea, it's become cliche, but it's rules for thee, not for me. The laws seem to only apply just like it did for the wealthy neighborhoods. Those who have benefit from the law, those who are fighting the establishment have the law weaponized against them. And that's why people have lost respect for the entire system in this country. And why Oregon is really devolved into a failed state. I mean, we may have sports teams, we may have, a very positive opinion of ourselves, but for every intent and purpose, we are a failed state. We can't even protect our young people. We can't provide basic, adequate services, and crime just completely continues to spiral out of control.
I mean, we are the state of death. If you want to kill yourself or you want to kill your child that's just about to be born, hey, just fly to Oregon and we'll pay for it. We'll pay for you to have assisted suicide. We'll pay for you to have this abortion, and you can be an illegal alien. We don't give a crap.
No, it's completely ludicrous. And again, it gets sort of to the transgender thing, which I have to hammer this. Anybody who doesn't support transgender youth reassignment should not be voting for any mainstream Republican, because they will follow that the system, the guidelines for how they say we're supposed to handle this thing. Well, we got to respect the judicial process. No, if a judge tells you, you need to light yourself on fire with a can of gasoline and a Zippo lighter, I don't think you listen. I think there's a point where you have to say, you know what, on this one, I'm willing to go and be put in contempt of court and thrown in a jail cell.
It was like what Kevin Starrett was telling me when he went to the last school board meeting in, Canby. He lives in Canby. And he was telling me that he couldn't believe that he went to a school board meeting and the discussion was whether or not they were going to allow men in the girls' bathroom. And all these big guys, these big truckers, loggers, all these big guys were standing there willing to have this argument instead of burning down the place just for suggesting the argument. And I totally agree with them. Once they got us to the point where we're debating it, well, is it good to let guys in with little girls in the bathroom or not? It's not even a question, and it shouldn't be asked, right?
Well, and it's funny, we hear about, and we see Oregon Right to Life, which is one of the most ludicrous organizations in our state, in my opinion, because You know, for all the money they've sucked in, I don't know how they've moved the ball one bit. And they endorse every election cycle. Any Republican who votes for the budget votes for about 8,000 abortions a year paid for at taxpayer expense with your money.
Yeah.
You know, money that could have gone to other things that were more productive. And they passed a law, and Republicans would not block it. Again, I mentioned this before, saying they can take your kid away if you don't want to mutilate them or chemically castrate them or both. And they passed this kind of policy saying, well, these transgender people, you know, they're going to kill themselves if we don't affirm them. Well, shit, we have a law in the books that says you could kill yourself for any reason.
Right.
But of course, don't do it at home. It has to be by a licensed physician. And we know now from studies that the suicide rate doesn't go down after the surgery. As a matter of fact, it goes up.
Yep. Every study, the last two that I've read, one was from Europe somewhere. Yeah, they have not only does this go away if you just let kids go through the emotions and go through the process, not only does it go away, but if you give them the operation, there's a damn good chance they're going to kill themselves because they realize the reality is Danny can't become Denise. It just can't happen. You might pretend for long enough, but most people realize once they get to that situation that cutting off body parts really wasn't the solution.
Well, the funny thing is, it's like I say to people on the other side of the argument, when they dig up your bones 1,000 years from now,
yep,
they ain't going to know you changed who you are. Your bones are going to say, this was a man, this was a woman.
Yep.
Because you can't change that. And it's funny, we used to be focused on in this country, and this used to be a very positive aspect of what was known as the left in America, was that you need to just sort of be comfortable with who you are, not modify yourself. You know, it's like, you know, you don't need to do this. You need to come to peace with who you are. And instead of that, and it's so bizarre that a segment of the gay community support transgender intervention because, and again, it's not monolithic. There's a lot of gay people that are very uncomfortable with this stuff.
Right. But it's anti-gay. The transgender movement is anti-gay, isn't it?
Well, the funny thing is, one of my good volunteers in the party, a fellow named Tom Bussey, is running in House District 33 in downtown Portland. That'll be a fun treat for him. But you know, that tells you he's not afraid of a fight. And he was explaining to me, though, he goes, you know, for years and years, we had to fight to tell people we weren't mentally ill and we didn't need medical intervention. This is the direct opposite. You're saying these people are so fragile, so disturbed, that unless you feed a delusion that they need to be, you know, that they will kill themselves. I mean, this is nonsense. But regardless of all of that, you don't hear pushback from the Republicans on this. Oh, they get mad when an Algerian transgender beats the piss out of some girl from Italy. But what are they going to do about it? Nothing.
Right. No. And we know this because three of the Republicans turned on the other senators who walked out of session in 2023 to allow House Bill 2005 to pass, which was not only allowed kids to get the transgender operation, but allowed girls as young as 10 to get abortions. And then you've got the Right to Life, who endorsed a lot of these Republicans. And here was the funny thing, is that they then sent a letter out, because I supported the guy who ran against David Brock Smith, who was Todd Vaughn. They sent a letter out saying that they had endorsed him when he was running for school board, but for some reason they didn't like the way he was campaigning, because, you know, he was exposing Brock for the dirtbag he was. They didn't like the way we were campaigning, and so therefore, not only are they not going to support us, but they're going to condemn us in a letter that they sent to us, which I'm sure was spawned on by the senator himself.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, I could go on and on about David Brock Smith, but I mean, he's the best Republican for the Democrats, right? I mean, talk about controlled opposition. I mean, this is why I love, and again, I'm not here to mock anybody who has invested their time in the Republican Party. There are lots of good Republicans. I used to be one of them a long time ago. My folks are still Republicans. At the same time, this you look at it and you see that any opposition voice is immediately shut down, and the press doesn't want to cover it because, let's be honest, the press is at this point what little press is left in Oregon, because they're all dying off. I mean legacy press, traditional press, corporate press, and they're subsidized with the public legal notices. And if they get remotely uppity with news coverage, you don't think the legislature will get rid of that requirement? Because local governments have wanted it gone for a long time. The only ones who really like it are county commissioners, because they can buy good coverage with the amount they get. It leaches money from local districts and cities, and there have been attempts to get rid of it for years. The legislature every couple of years looks at this, and the Oregon Newspapers Association cries foul. And it's amazing. You get every 2 years, you can look at through the news searches through Google or any other search engine. Coverage of Oregon political races has plummeted. Critical coverage is almost non-existent.
Right.
The only people who are doing real journalism in this state, in the traditional sense, from papers, is Willamette Week, and that's because they aren't owned by these same corporations.
Right.
And I'm not going boo-hiss corporations. I'm just saying corporations are about the bottom line. They have to operate in almost sort of an amoral sensibility. At the same time, that conflicts with what the goal of a press is if you want to have an informed electorate. And so you see all these controlled organs. You see groups like Right to Life that are clearly not right to life. You see groups like the Oregon Republican Party. You see things like conservative newspapers and media outlets. But they all want access. They all want money. They all want goodies. And I'm not mocking, like I said, anybody who really has believed in the Republican Party. What I am going to say is it's never too late to leave. It's sort of like an abusive relationship, right?
Right.
It's not an admission that you were a fool to leave. The only way you're a fool is if you stay. And I would just say to anybody, regardless of what party they're in, if you want to be part of an organization where you can look yourself in the mirror and actually have some self-respect, if you want to be part of an organization that's moving the ball, if you want to be part of an organization that represents our values, American values, they should give us a look, the Libertarian Party, because we will include folks. We will put them in the key leadership positions. It's about work. That's the currency that matters to me and to the party. It's not so much about dollars. It's about work. And I don't know any other party in this state that has the same philosophy. And so if folks want to get involved and they want to get engaged and they want to make a difference and they want to actually feel what political empowerment is, they really ought to give us a quick look.
Oh, I think so. And I think with what's going on in the Republican Party, you may find yourself finding some Republican refugees who are going to be going over to the Libertarian Party. I myself, I'm probably going to be, at some point, I know this, I'll be re-registering as a non-affiliated voter. And, I'm not the abused wife. I'm the abuser because I wanted to join the party just so I can get closer to my enemies. And if I could reform it, I was hoping to maybe do that. But after the last 4 months of being in the party and working within its infrastructure, there's no reforming this mess. This mess is too far gone, man.
Well, no. And again, the one area where the Republicans have any backbone is on corporate welfare. The Chamber of Commerce, they love Dick Anderson. They love David Brock Smith.
Right.
Because they deliver on absolutely nothing else except for corporate welfare. And I would say to anybody, I say this often actually in conversation. What's the difference between a Chamber of Commerce meeting and a homeless camp? Not much, but beyond better outfits. Maybe it smells a little better because they're both begging for your money, one way or the other.
Well, you get that banquet meal too. Yeah.
Well, I mean, hey, man, the food may be, they got at least drugs down at the homeless camp. I mean,
Yeah, they got drugs at the homeless camp. Make you forget about the whole mess. Yeah, the Chamber of Commerce. I got a note or an email from the lady who's now the I don't know what her position is, the chair of the chamber or whatnot, but she asked me to give her a call and to join the Chamber of Commerce. And I was going to give her a call. I have no intentions of joining because I like to stay impartial. In fact, that's why I'm thinking of leaving the Republican Party again, is to keep that impartiality. But the Chamber of Commerce they try to represent all the businesses in their area, and yet probably less than 10% of the businesses actually belong to the chamber. It's it's just one of those things where they try to portray themselves as something they're really not. They are there for specific businesses and to push specific policies that, like you said, it doesn't matter whether they're Democrat or Republicans, they're looking for that next handout.
Well, and it's hilarious because you think the paramount issue of concern to all businesses would have been the crime issue. If you're participating in commerce, crime is a major challenge, whether it be a vagrant drunk, passed out or belligerent on the street, or whether it be drug paraphernalia and the odor of drugs downtown, or the thefts that come with it. And not having a criminal justice system that does anything about it. Where were they on that issue? Nowhere. But where are they at when they want lots and lots of money for a terminal that they'll make lots of money off of? Oh, come to mom and pop. It's socialism. Remember, it's socialism when you bail out a homeowner from foreclosure. It's capitalism when you bail out the banks that take the house. That's at least that's Republican capitalism. I'm not poo-pooing capitalism.
Right.
I'm saying no, what we have right now, that ain't capitalism. One of the biggest con jobs the Republicans ever pulled was trying to
right. Well, I would agree with that. That's the problem right now is the capitalism the Republicans are selling. Unless you listen to the details really well. Yeah, they make it sound like a good game, but it's really not. It's corporatism, and corporatism, if anyone doesn't understand, is the economic system of a fascist country, a fascist government. So I don't know.
And I think I mentioned this in conversation over the years, and it's more true today than ever. We live under a fascist system, except for we don't get any of the perks. Say what you want. In Italy, the trains stayed on time. We can't even keep them on the rails.
Right.
Keep them on the rails.
Good point.
Crime was almost non-existent. Their housing was affordable. So say what you want about how evil fascism was, and again, it's a very bad system. But we have all the worst parts of it here. We have censorship. We have corporate subsidy of businesses and utilizing the state and the courts against all opposition. We have aggressive certification requirements for fields and licensing. And we have a heavy restriction of capital to only preferred interests. That's fascism, except for we're a failed state at the same time. It's fascism without the perks.
Right.
And that really is the Republican platform.
It's like they've taken the worst of socialism and the worst of fascism, corporatism mainly. And they meld it together so you can't tell the difference between one and the other. And we're going to use it. That's what we're using now. If we went back to one of the, I don't believe he was a libertarian, but someone who the libertarians follow, Mises. If you look at von Mises, there was a third option back in Germany in the Weimar Republic at one time. There was a third option, and it was libertarianism, and the way they present capitalism as a free market, non-voluntary, the non-aggression type market,
Well, no, and guess what? A society that isn't based on compulsion, usually, I would argue, is a better one, because people are less likely to snap, to have the hostility or the adverse social impacts that can happen from being forced to do something. But again, I think the problem is the Republicans and Democrats know if the people were left to their own devices, things would be very, very different in this country from the way they are now, and it would not be good for them.
It would not be good for them. Yeah. Well, it's a big club. We're just not in it, Matt. That's the problem. Let me ask you this. Let's change the subject. There was one other thing you wanted to discuss before I got you out of here, and I forget what that was.
Operation Warhawk removal, which again goes into the thing with Lori DeReamer.
Okay.
And as we just saw, by the way, I don't know if your audience saw this, we're shipping off a bunch of Oregon National Guardsmen to Syria and Iraq. Now, one, we have illegally occupied Syria since the Obama administration when we tried to overthrow Assad's government and put in place essentially Al-Qaeda terrorists who were working with the Obama administration. Since that time, we've illegally occupied it. Actually, let me clarify. I don't want to say we, because I think one of the worst things we've done in this country, Rob, is say that what our government is representing us. No, it does not. So let me say the government and its army have occupied it illegally oil fields. And the Syrians have finally gotten things stabilized in that country to the point where they're fighting back and they're taking back, rightfully, their oil fields. And our National Guardsmen now are going to be sent over to try and take them back with no declaration of war. And worst of all, the National Guard isn't even supposed to be used in this capacity. One of the things I'm proudest of the party and the LPO in recent years is we firmly backed an idea called Defend the Guard, which is that the National Guard is meant to defend the country in times of crisis or in wildfires, natural disasters, things of that nature. And it's funny, we don't use it for that purpose. You think the National Guard would have been called in during the BLM riots. But it didn't happen. But we are sending them to Iraq to protect BP oil, and not a peep from the Republicans on this, and our facilities in Iraq and Syria have been attacked at a much higher level since October 7th, when the conflict in occupied Palestine began. And we're taking these guys who volunteered to help in natural disasters and to defend their state, and we're asking them to go in the middle of a war zone of an undeclared war.
And this is the problem with the industrial complex. This isn't it literally another tax as well, because we're paying for these guys to go there, and we're paying for interests that really aren't our best interest.
No, the funny thing is, and nobody likes to talk about this on the Republican side, our policy towards Venezuela, Iran, and Russia regarding oil exports is part of the reason why our gas prices are so high. We've taken three of the biggest world producers of oil, and we don't buy legal Syrian oil, by the way, for that Syrians still control. And so basically you have cut off half the world's oil supply from us, and you've made it available to all the other countries that are competing against you at a lower cost because there's a glut of surplus in the market. It's basic economics. And yet we try and pretend like we hurt these people. There's always a buyer for oil.
Right.
They may get the Venezuelan government may get less money for it because of the restrictions and having to sell under these conditions, but they have enough money for guns and for thugs. And
it would be like someone telling a cokehead telling their coke dealer, "Hey, I'm not going to buy that. I'm cutting you off. I'm just not going to buy that cocaine anymore." Well, okay. I mean, someone's going to buy the cocaine. I'm not too worried if you don't buy it from me. I mean, it's ridiculous. If there's a demand for this product, you could sell it on the freaking moon.
Well, absolutely. And the thing is, most of the illegals coming into this country today aren't from Mexico. All the folks from Mexico who wanted to be here got here a long time ago. We're going south here, pal. We're dealing with Peruvians. We're dealing with El Salvador. God, I don't even know how to El Salvadorans.
El Salvador.
I know how to say their country. I'm trying to say, what is it? El Salvadoran? I don't know what you call it.
El Salvadoran. Yeah.
And Nicaraguans, and primarily Venezuelans. And the reason they're coming up here is we've made the country unlivable. They should be. They've got massive oil reserves, massive copper, gold, and silver. But since they wouldn't play ball with American oil companies and British oil companies, we said, "Oh, we're fighting socialism and human rights violations," which is hilarious because we backed the Saudi regime.
And we practice socialism, so
yeah, just reverse socialism, right? And we basically made that economy unable to support its population, and where do they go? Venezuelans, yeah, their government literally said, their borders are open. They won't let us make money. Why don't you go up there?
You made a good point of how we're in Syria right now. And I've been opposing that for a long time. People don't even realize that we've been in Syria, which is really a proxy war between America and Russia and Israel and Iran. It's just a proxy war that's being played out in a fourth country here. Actually, that'd be a fifth country. And the sad part is that, oh gosh, where was I going with this? That those people in Syria are now coming over to this country because we and those other major countries have destroyed their country, destroyed any sense of ability to live a decent life there. So where else are they going to go?
Well, and here's the thing, they don't want to come to most of them don't. Look,
don't really want to come here, right?
There are some, by the way, who are looking to mooch, no doubt about it. There are dirtbags and criminals. My grievance with this migration is that it's making it more difficult for all of us. And the reason is, why are they being driven here? It's because of our government's political corporate interests,
right?
And we made Iraq unlivable. We made Syria unlivable. And you wonder why you're having these riots in England right now. It's because you bust in millions of these guys because you blew up the Middle East for oil interests, the Saudi royal family's interests, and I know some of your audience may not like this, but for Israel's interests. And none of this was to the benefit of America. Regardless of how you feel about any of these things, I'm not going to make a moral determination on this for people. They need to make that for themselves. But what benefit is it to you and me as a citizen to send these guys who could be here fighting wildfires right now, where we could use them, to send them over to take back oil refineries that rightfully belong to the Syrians? This makes no sense. And to the point that we're getting back to it, not a peep from the Republicans, not a peep. But America first, right? As long as the guy has elephants on his socks, it's okay. And I think one of the reasons the Republicans are so mad at me for taking the fight to him on this is because I'm pointing out their utter hypocrisy constantly. Because people are looking for an alternative, a political alternative, and I would love to offer it on the right. And maybe not. Maybe I don't even, because there are leftists who could easily adopt this philosophy. Also, it's just not collectivist. It's based on volunteerism instead of compulsion. And so, whether somebody, and again, there aren't a lot of lefties listening to your show, but I'm not saying we even need to necessarily be a hard right party. We need a party that needs to be based off of America first, traditional capitalism, maintaining law and order, and making sure that we don't have artificial barriers in place to things like housing and healthcare that make them unaffordable for our people. We need to actually have a system in place where there's competition and it's affordable. And there aren't these insurance monopolies and healthcare provider monopolies. We need to bring competition back to this country. The only people who we aren't allowed to compete with are the most powerful. This makes no sense whatsoever, especially when these corporate interests support Algerian boxers bashing in women's faces. Apparently, they're fine with the underdog competing in that circumstance.
Yeah, it's okay to abuse women as long as it's sanctioned abuse, right?
It's sort of like it's all right to commit suicide as long as your doctor's doing it in a clinical environment.
But if you're doing it with drugs and you're on the street, we're going to force that Narcan into you and bring you back to life so you can try it again.
Well, I was reading a book on Pierre Laval. He was the French prime minister in Vichy, France, under the Nazi occupation. And I was reading about how he was executed, because he was found guilty and executed after for being a collaborationist. He tried to kill himself right before his execution with poison. They pumped his stomach just so they could keep him alive, to put him up on the post and shoot him. It sort of reminds me of what Dante wrote, right? The last circle of hell is reserved for traitors. I think maybe that logic is what scares the Republicans the most, is that what if their own members realize who they truly are.
Well, and that was something else I had been discussing with Kevin Starrett. Maybe the people we're calling rhinos, the establishment, really aren't the rhinos. Maybe it's patriotic Republicans who are the rhinos. They just haven't realized who or what the party really is. I mean, look at Lincoln. Lincoln started the Republican Party, and he violated the Constitution on a regular basis. He wasn't known for individual rights, really, when you get down to it, even after supposedly helping free the slaves, which Congress did itself. The Emancipation Act didn't quite do the job like most people think or believe, but you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And without getting into too much of it, Lincoln was the most tyrannical president in American history.
Yeah.
And is one of the best examples of how the winners write the history books. Well,
that's why they're trying. I think the Republican Party is starting to go away from the Lincoln dinners and having the Ronald Reagan dinners. I noticed the last couple of years that's been changing. I don't know.
Well, and I think that's partially because Reagan was their poster boy, right? Lots of money for the military-industrial complex, tax cuts that feed inflation and add to the deficit, while lip service on social issues. What better front man for the Republican Party than the ghost of, I understand a lot of people like him, but a guy, I would argue, much like Trump in his first term, did not deliver on a lot of the key promises.
No, and they never do, and that's the problem with. And I'm going to be voting for Trump. I'm a Trump supporter for the very fact that I don't think the Libertarian candidate. Well, okay, let's be honest. Your Libertarian candidate for president, he's a little wacko. He's a lot wacko. Okay,
I would agree. By the way, I did not support him. My hands are tied because he is the nominee, though.
He's the nominee,
but. I will say, by the way, if you want to see what the folks who are trying to, like Mr. Burke, folks like him who don't like the way the party is right now, Burke voted for him on every ballot at the convention, every ballot for Chase Oliver. And, I don't know how you reconcile that with what we heard on Friday night.
I didn't recognize the name the first time you said it, Chase Oliver, but he never mentioned that while he was on the air. Interesting.
But
that I would, and I didn't ask him. I asked Sonia. I made the same comment to her as I just did to you about the Libertarian choice for president. Yeah.
Yeah. No. He has many imperfections. I have taken no action to try and hinder his being the nominee in the state of Oregon, though, because sometimes you got to eat crow when you lose a political fight, right? Because
that's part of being in the party. That's almost part of the reason why I don't even want to be in a party, because of that fact. You, as someone who's the chair of the party, the state party, you're obligated to support your presidential candidate because that's the rules of the game according to the party.
Well, the only reason, and I'm not terrified of rejecting the party's nominee or getting any criticism for it. It's just that I intend for our side to win next time, and I don't want them kicking our nominee off of state ballots. And so it's one of those situations where, you know what, they probably did a little hook and crook, but you didn't catch them with a smoking gun. Sometimes you just got to take it and focus on more productive things like Operation Warhawk removal, which targets folks like Lori DeReamer, who likes to send our National Guardsmen overseas in the war zones instead of fighting the wildfires they should that affect you and me, and maintaining order in what is an increasingly failing state. It's to target folks like her who are pushing us closer to nuclear war every day, all because she just wants a handout from the military-industrial complex. And so
that's the fashionable thing to do, and you're in the major party, and they both do it, Democrats and Republicans alike.
But Sonia, I would argue, and obviously, I want to boost our candidate in Oregon, but I would say she is the most likely to succeed in Operation Warhawk removal, given as it's one of the closest districts in America. She's a compelling and strong candidate, and I would argue on the issues of significance in this election, inflation, corporate welfare, nuclear war, the situation in the Middle East. She's the only candidate providing any option to America First voters.
That's why I'm endorsing her. I'm going to, and now, and I can't really talk about it because I promised the person who I got into this conversation. I was going to vote for Despain, and I didn't realize there was a Libertarian candidate in that race. And after something that got back to me, that Despain is mad at me for criticizing her for not wanting to be filmed at a public meeting. I am now going to be getting that Libertarian candidate on the show to talk about his candidacy, because the Republicans have basically blacklisted me. And of course they won't come on. The Democrats never will come on. And so that either leaves me with the Constitution candidates or the Libertarian candidates, which in some cases, like Sonia, was a delight. She's a lovely lady libertarian who's very educated on the issues and can communicate those issues very well, very eloquently.
No, and again, this is why they're so damn scared, because they know. When I say they, I mean the political establishment, the Uniparty, the Democrats, Republicans, Lori DeReamer, however you want to put it.
Yep.
It's the folks who are getting fat off the trough, which is filled with your money, and they know. Holy shit, we put these two broads up next to Sonia. We put up Janelle and we put up Lori next to Sonia. They're going to see what an actual person with integrity looks like.
Right.
You can't let the folks know about that. You can't let them know, right? Because they have tried to condition us. And this is psychological conditioning of the kind you see in autocratic countries, authoritarian countries.
Right.
Is they've trained us to believe that we can't change the system. Much like how you train a baby elephant. They train a baby elephant in the circus. They they chain them and shackle them and stake it into the ground with a little stake, which is a baby they can't pull out. And by the time they're grown-ups or adult elephants, they still leave the shackle on them. But the elephant could easily pull the stake out of the ground and just walk off.
Right.
But the elephant has been conditioned from childhood to think they are, any chance. That they don't have any chance of ever pulling it out, so they just sit there and be good little elephants. And I can't think of a better example of the modern Republican Party than that.
Yeah, I think I criticize them on a regular basis, and it's not that I don't. I think the Democrat Party, in fact, this is a term Jim Bice often used, and I kind of agree with him. I do agree with him. He used to call the Democrats the party of evil and the Republicans the party of stupid. And it was hard to disagree with him because, like you said, with the controlled opposition, they pretty much are puppets for the other side, and they're playing the people who are in the party, the root and the file basic person in the party, their base. They're playing us for suckers.
Yeah, and I think people are waking up to it. I think, when times are good and credit's loose and the government's giving away the goodies, people don't pay attention to these things as much. Right. But when a dozen eggs costs $4, when they're putting tampons in your boy's room and they're saying that, puberty-aged young men can be in the bathroom with your daughter, or a 60-year-old man for that matter.
Right.
As long as he wears a dress, it's okay to them. And that you're inserting the government in the parent-child relationship. Again, the most sacred bond. I think people are finally having enough. I think the issue with the homeless, crime issue, and again, I'm not trying to villainize somebody just for not having a home. At the same time, the total lack of response by our civil authorities to deal with the issue, and the fact that while we're dealing with these issues, we can't maintain law and order. We're giving away record numbers in corporate welfare. And we're still, apparently, even though we're getting migrants from these very aggressive policies of ours in the Middle East and in Latin America, we aren't changing our policies at all. And I think people are waking up to it. I don't think anybody wants to go to war in the Middle East again, at least not a traditional war. I don't think people like this when they're informed about what we're doing in Syria. I don't think people like what we're doing in the Ukraine. And I think people are going to maybe consider, especially in the 5th District, this one time, maybe break that chain that's on the ankle, pull that stake out of the ground, and maybe shove it up the ass of the controlled opposition Republican Party.
Yeah, that would be nice. I would like to see that. And I want to thank you for coming on. We'll have to get you on again. I do enjoy talking with you. And like you said, I enjoy talking to Richard. I've completely starting to completely see the whole argument, and I think he's wrong on this after seeing the Richardson letter and taking this through the courts, continuing his battle. I think it's antithetical to what you really should be doing as a party, and it's sad that the Republicans are going to play big bullies because they're the controlled opposition. They think they can score points on this, and it's really only favoring you as a third party. So I want to thank you for being on the show.
Absolutely, bud, and I'm glad to come on anytime.
You got it, man. You take care.
Take care.
All right. And that was Matt Rowe, from the chair of the Libertarian Party of Oregon. And as he said, it's an alternative. If you want an alternative to the two major parties who, like I said, the Democrats are the party of evil and the Republicans are the party of stupid. The Republican Party could be so much more today if they actually would stand by what supposedly Republicans do believe. But Oregon Republicans, and I'm talking about the establishment, I'm talking about the uniparty inside the party, who think that they have to compromise their values to be able to get elected, and getting elected is the only important thing. And it's not the only important thing. It's just the only important thing to political hacks. And politicians have two jobs. Their first job is to get elected. Their second job is to get reelected. And they don't care who they hurt and what they have to do to get that job done. And that's just what's playing out. And unfortunately, and I know a lot of people in the Libertarian Party, third parties, are going to be upset by this, but the only way to win is to have a shitload of money. This is why Trump has been so successful, is because not only has he self-funded for a good part, but he's made a lot of money from people out there who've given him donations, a lot of money from people giving him donations. And that's why if any political party wants to be successful, you got to be able to raise money for your candidate. We knew going into the race for I forget which Senate district is. Senate District 1, I believe that is for David Brock Smith, or is that Dick Anderson? I can't remember. It doesn't really matter. But the Senate district that we were challenging in, the incumbent had $300,000 in his war chest that he could spend. In fact, he didn't have quite $300,000 when we started the fight, but by the end, he was able to collect up to $300,000, and he spent it. He spent it on flyers. He spent it on advertising. He spent it on all kinds of things that politicians need to be able to get out their message and to notify the public that they are running and this is who they are. We weren't able to do that with our candidate because we had $20,000 to $25,000. And the fact is, this is just the sad fact of life. It takes money to win. And I don't know if I'd really want it any other way. You tell me what other way we could run campaigns without money that would work. I mean, no matter what you did, money would be a factor. I don't care what anyone says. Money is just what makes the world go round. And I know people, oh no, it's love. Love makes the world go around. Yeah, well, I don't know. Tell that to investment traders. So money is what's the most important thing in politics, unfortunately. And because the two major parties have the biggest donors, because they raise the kinds of funds that they raise, they're always going to have an advantage over third parties. And the only way it's going to change is if people finally realize that we're done with the system, And the system, it isn't broke. It's been sabotaged. It's been sabotaged by the uniparty, and it's working exactly the way they want it to work. I know people are going, oh no, Rob, the system's broken. No, it's not broken. It's working quite well for the connected, for the people who are very wealthy, for the people who are in the uniparty. Those people, they love it the way it is. They don't care. They don't live in the neighborhoods that are getting crapped on every day. No, they don't live in high crime areas. No, they don't have to worry. Their children don't go to public school. Their children goes to a very nice private school. They don't care. They don't care about us, and especially don't care about us in rural Oregon. And maybe if rural Oregonians would pull their head out and realize that, maybe we would have non-affiliated candidates or third-party candidates winning these elections. I mean, I would love to see someone. I would love to see Sonia, who's a libertarian, running against DeReamer and I forget the other lady's name, who's the Democrat in that race. But I would love to see her win against those two people because she's better. She's just a better person, and she'll never win. I know she won't win because she just doesn't have the funding to get her name and her face out in front of enough people enough times, because it's not even just one contact. You got to contact people at least 3 or 4 times during the election to give them the idea that you might be someone worthy of voting for. And that's not the fault of the system. That's the fault of the people who have been brainwashed by the system. So get over it. Get over the fact, if you're a Republican and you're mad at the party, well, stop being mad at the party. Either change parties or start voting for people who are in other parties besides your own. And it really doesn't matter if a Republican wins or not, because if your Republican candidate is going to vote exactly like the Democrat, then what's the difference between voting for a Republican or a Democrat in any race if they're both behaving the same? There is no difference. That's an easy answer. And so we have to get out of that box, and it's not a fault of the system. It's a fault of the people who have not recognized the system has been sabotaged. And we need to break that sabotage by not letting certain candidates get into office. And that's why I'm so totally supporting Sonia Feintesh in her campaign in the 5th district. Let's see. We got the Democrats. Yes, the party of evil. And maybe this is part of the reason some of us think that they are the party of evil. Well, just look at this. This was a meme that was put out, and I think it exemplifies what we're going to suffer. This is literally what we're going to suffer if we allow this woman, Kamala Harris, and her vice presidential choice. If we allow these two people to get the power of the presidency, to get the office of the presidency, we will be living under a worse form of communism than we kind of are now. It's not quite communism, it's socialism. It's a nice, friendly socialism that gives you a warm blanket and a hot cup of coffee that you paid for through your taxes. But yes, that's the kind of socialism we have. And eventually that nice, comfortable socialism ends up to be that hardcore communism that we're going for, where you have no rights, where the individual has been erased. It's all about collectivism, and you are part of the party, the Borg. And if you don't comply, you will die. If you don't comply, you will die. That's the simple terms of any communist collectivist regime. And if you vote for Kamala, if you're out there and you're someone who's thinking, and I doubt there's anyone watching my show is thinking, oh, well, hey, yeah, I'm going to continue voting for Kamala. She's great. She does a wonderful job. Just look at the shape of our country right now. No, like Matt said, he said paying $4 for a dozen of eggs. I paid $4.79 down at a Raise. It was Price and Pride here in Bandon. I paid $4.79 for a dozen jumbo eggs. I mean, we are in some deep shit in this country when eggs are getting near $5 a carton. When they're getting anywhere near over that, think of what the restaurants have to go through. Eggs are one of the basic, eggs and milk and bread are one of the basic building blocks to any meal. Any meal you make is probably going to have one of those items. And we, as a country, we're not going to be able to survive at this rate of inflation. And I really don't understand people who are going to accept this by voting for Kamala, the Ugandan giant there. Gasoline up 51%, electricity up 32%, airfare 23%, groceries 22%, rent 22%, K through 12 food 66%. This is a real hit. They wonder why people aren't having kids. Well, shit, man. Feeding your kid has gone up 66%. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't even want to be a young couple trying to raise a kid now. I feel sorry for my son and his girlfriend who are raising my granddaughter. It's so damn expensive out there. And you know, this is not just K through 12 food. I mean, groceries overall, I said, are like 22%. I mean, my parents are, and many of my relatives who are seniors, they're living on a fixed income. They can't afford these prices, the heating bills, the insurance. It's all just going up, up, up. And look there at the bottom left-hand corner, eggs. I was just talking about a carton of eggs, 47%. Of course. And if you look at the America under Kamala, 20.2% inflation with 3.9% lower salaries. Your salaries have gone down. Inflation has gone up. I saw a statistic out there that the average family has paid about $28,000 more per year to live life in America. Isn't that nice? $28,000. You got 28 grand to spare. Neither do I, and neither do most Americans. And that's why, you know, we got to get this fixed. Something's got to happen, or we're going to suffer some serious consequences. There's going to be some serious consequences. There we go. I want to get on to some of the things that is happening here. Boom. Let's see, I promised you a new video. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But Bohm, they have filed the assessments on the Oregon coastal offshore wind energy turbines. They have been released. Let me see if I can find that here. It's easier for me to read it if I got it on the paper. Here we go. The final assessment on Oregon coast offshore wind energy. This came out of... on the news just recently. Washington, D.C., the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management says offshore wind leases along the Oregon coast will have no significant impacts to people or the environment. Now, this is BOEM. This is a government agency. Do you trust government agencies? I know I sure as hell don't trust government agencies. So when a government agency says that this huge project, that these huge turbines that they want to put in the ocean, over 260 of them, the size of the Empire State Building with 3 wings, the span of a football field, that this is not going to have any, there will be no significant impact to people or the environment. You know they're full of bullshit. No significant impact? I think there's going to be a huge significant impact, but let me continue reading. That's according to the agency's final environmental assessment, which was released last Tuesday. The assessment includes site appraisal and characterization activities such as geophysical, geological, and archaeological surveys, which was once again done by people probably on their laptop who are bureaucrats who work for BOEM or some other bureaucracy and gets paid by the same government who has lied to us so many times in the past. I don't even know why we believe them anymore. But the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management Director, Elizabeth Klein, says the agency used the best available science and information to make this decision. You know how that's how they cover their ass. It was the best available. That's what the best available science. Yeah, that's why when you think you're going to get COVID, you got to go get the vaccine. And even after you get the vaccine, you get COVID. Well, you got to get another vaccine. Yeah, that's because it's going to prevent the COVID and tell you the next time you get it. Yeah, this is the same government who's telling you that these windmills won't have any significant impact on people in the environment. But I have a quote from Elizabeth Klein. She says, working with tribes, government partners, ocean users, I don't know who the hell those people are. And the public, we gathered a wealth of data, diverse perspectives, and valuable insights that shaped our environment analysis, Klein said. We remain committed to continuing this close coordination to ensure potential offshore wind energy leasing and any future development in Oregon is done in a way that avoids, reduces, and mitigates potential impacts to ocean users and the marine environment. You know what's missing from that? The voice of the people. We're paying for this, but no one ever asked me, do you want this? Did they ask you if you wanted this wind turbine project? You're paying for it. The companies that are leasing this, not only will we pay for this project, but we're paying for the studies for this project. We're paying any losses that the company suffers. Do you like that deal? Yeah, the company suffers a loss. We have to pay for that. Oh, and by the way, if these turbines, these Empire State sized turbines, if there's any damage caused by the blades coming apart, washing up on our beaches, guess what? We pay for that as well. We pay for the whole damn kit and caboodle, and it's going to increase our energy charges. And most of the energy isn't even going to go to Oregonians. Most of it, all of it, is going to California. Yes, we destroy our coast in Oregon, so Californians can get the benefit of this so-called green energy. It's not green at all. But the final EA comes after a public comment period in which officials addressed community members' questions and concerns on the proposed lease sale. That's bullshit. Right there, that's bullshit. They didn't address our concerns. They wouldn't even answer our freaking questions. They ignored us. There's a difference between listening to someone speak, listening to the group speak, and then acting on what you heard them say. They listened, but they didn't follow through on that listening. I don't think they really heard us. They just saw our lips moving and said, yeah. Oh, we hear your concern. We're greatly concerned. It's like when what's his name? Dick Anderson tried to answer the question on whether he was for or against the turbine project. And at the end of his 5-minute answer, we still didn't know whether he was for or against it. Well, that's the same thing as these listening organizations. Sure, we showed up, we spoke, and they don't give a damn. But the start of that comment period came weeks after the Department of Interior made the announcement on the proposed auction lease terms for 2 years off the Oregon coast for potential wind energy leasing. The two proposed locations are offshore near Brookings and Coos Bay. The Bureau says the two sites will total the amount of 195,000 acres and avoid 98% of the areas recommended for exclusion due to commercial fishing importance. I don't give a crap. I don't give a damn. You're putting up 260 windmills. Don't tell me that you cut a little bit off the size of this and it's not going to impact as what you already have planned, because what you already have planned is going to destroy the fishing industry. But it says Bohm says the lease sale for the two locations will be held later this year, with a final sale notice to be published 30 days before it's finalized. At that time, any leases would then be able to submit a project plan to Bohm for review. It does not mean that construction or operation at an offshore wind energy facility would begin immediately. And of course, that's once again, that's a bunch of BS. But it was funny. Like I said, I've got a new video here. I didn't realize that David Brock Smith was an actor, and he's part of the new series Tulsa King. Yeah, they did a whole advertisement about wind turbines, and I don't know if you missed the part where David Brock Smith was there, but I'll play it for you. Just
enthusiastic I am about the possibility of moving forward, not only with this offshore wind opportunities and the investments that are coming from the federal governments under the Biden administration.
What do you know about wind turbines?
I know they blow.
Buckle up, here we go.
Yeah, that was so bad even Kamala is laughing about it, and so that's pretty weird. I didn't think that David Brock Smith was such a good actor that he would be on the stage with Sylvester Stallone. And hey, the Italian stallion there, hey, you know, he thinks wind energy blows too. And so good thing. I'm going to have to tune into that series. I don't normally watch TV with their fictional soap operas like that, but I might tune in for that one just to see why they're fighting against the wind turbine. Why is Sylvester Stallone so pissed off? And maybe we'll get to see more of David Brock Smith in there pushing this windmill project. But the worst thing about it is, and there's some things they're not talking about, there was a Supporting National Environmental Policy Act documentation for offshore wind energy development related to high voltage direct current cooling systems. I don't know if you've ever heard of a high voltage direct current cooling system. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all. In fact, here's the executive summary of this. Offshore wind development on the Atlantic outer continental shelf is moving further offshore, and with the distances comes the challenge of effectively transporting the power to users offshore, meaning the people in California and from the Oregon coast, yes. And alternating current AC generated from wind turbines may be transported onshore when the wind farm is within 30 miles or 50 kilometers. When a wind farm is located further than 30 miles from shore, additional equipment is required to effectively move this energy onshore without encountering significant losses of power during transmission. A high voltage direct current, or an HVDC system, is used to convert AC power to direct current, which is capable of being transported longer distances without significant power losses. Makes sense? Well, let me continue. The conversion process from AC to HVDC generates heat as a byproduct, and the systems require cooling to protect the equipment from damage and breakdown. Concerns have been raised to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management about the HVDC systems are cooled and the impacts of the cooling system to the environment. As of 2022, innovations in cooling systems are being studied and developed, but so far, no new systems are tested and available for use on a commercial sale, meaning that they're still using the same old HVDC system that they use for other projects like desalination facilities. And here is one of the systems that they're going to be using. This is called the open loop system. Now, here's where the problem comes. And remember, I just read you that article where Boehm's environmental assessment said there would be almost no impact to people or the environment. Well, let me explain to you what this open loop system does. The most effective way to cool large HVDC systems is by using deionized water in a closed system. The deionized water is then cooled by seawater pumped through a heat exchanger, absorbing heat from the deionized water. This open loop cooling process allows continual operation of the HVDC converter. Seawater, this is the water out in the ocean, the seawater is filtered to remove small particles, sand, and other elements to about 500 microns. Chemicals such as sodium hypochlorite may be added to prevent growth in the system with an estimated concentration of 10 to 200 parts per million as proposed by the Mayflower Wind Project. The filter heated water is then discharged back into the ocean, meaning they're going to pull water out of the ocean and they're going to heat this water up. And from what it didn't say how hot it was in this report, but from what I heard, it gets up to about 90 degrees. And after they heat this water up to about 90 degrees, because it's going to cool off the system that converts the AC to the HVDC, once it does that conversion, it heats up. And of course, the water is used to cool it. Once they use that water, it's going to be heated to about 90 degrees, and then it's going to be dumped back into the ocean. This is a lot of water that's being used for this system that's being heated up. Aren't the environmentalists concerned about the heating of the ocean? Wasn't wasn't that one of the concerns the environmentalists said they have, is that the ocean is getting warmer. Well, this green project actually uses a system, especially for wind farms that are 30 miles off of the coast. Anything that far or further off the coast has to use one of these open loop systems because they really don't have anything else to use. This is the modern technology that they have, and it pulls water in and it heats it up. Well, I guess they're not as concerned about that, but it even gets worse. I know you didn't want to hear this, but it does. HVDC systems are used across the globe where electricity is moved over long distances on land and offshore in cases where energy is transferred across borders with different electrical grid systems, or where renewable energy is connected to an existing electrical grid. Purified water is the cooling source for these systems, and open loop systems where cold water is pumped in for cooling and heated water is discharged back into the ocean or other waters or other water bodies in the standard design of these systems. Open loop systems are used for cooling many types of power generation, including coal, natural gas, thermoelectric, and nuclear. Of course, most of those aren't located in the ocean, one of the most delicate environments on the freaking planet, but that's what they got. But the HVDC systems are used in a range of electrical transmission systems around the world. In the US, as of 2022, only 2 federal offshore wind projects are proposing to use these systems. Now, I couldn't find out which of those 2 proposed projects are, and I believe one of them could be the one off the shore of Coos Bay, because that will be 30 to 50 miles offshore, and they're going to need an HVDC system to convert the energy. And of course, they're going to have to heat the water as well. But the remainder of the wind farms are using or have proposed to use AC due to their proximity to shore. BOEM has identified cumulative impacts as electromagnetic effects from the HVDC transmission cables, and notes an Environmental Protection Agency National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit required for the cooling system discharge. Now, that means that they're going to have to also, on top of heating this water, they're going to have to use certain chemicals to cool the water so that it can cool the transformation from AC to the DC current. And that process, it takes chemicals. And of course, those chemicals are also going to be dumped out with this heated water. So here you got a green energy deal where they're trying to tell you that this is much better for the environment, even though they're not telling you they're going to have to use water from the ocean to cool the lines that are being transferred from one type of energy current to another type of energy current. And they're going to add chemicals to that water. Then they're going to heat it up to about 90 degrees, and they're going to dump it back in the ocean. No impact whatsoever. Yeah, no impact whatsoever. But it gets even worse, my friend. Filtration systems on intake pipes capture small particles such as sand grains, but also filter larvae of marine species and plankton that other marine species consume. For one proposed U.S. offshore wind project, the filter removes particles larger than 500 microns. Most filtration systems backflush the filters to allow for continuous use, so the collected filtrates will eventually return to the ecosystem. However, larval species will be lost and will not grow to maturity. The number of larval fish and invertebrates lost in the process is difficult to measure. Losses of larval food sources for other species is notable, in addition to the larval species that do not survive to maturity. So in other words, let me paint the picture for you. They're going to use this project for Coos Bay. This is the Coos Bay project, which is 30 miles off the coast. They're going to heat the water up after they add a whole bunch of crappy chemicals to the water. And after they heat it up to 90 degrees, they're going to dump that into the ocean. But that's after they filtered it. And the filtration process is going to kill the larvae of small fish that are actually the food for the larger fish. And somehow the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management doesn't think there's going to be a freaking impact to people or to the environment? Who's flipping crazy here? It ain't me. It ain't me, Jack. They're lying to us. This is a bunch of bullshit that they're selling to us. And a lot of people out there are not realizing that with the wind turbines, 260 of them, some of them off of Brookings, some of them off of Coos Bay. Not only are the ones for Coos Bay, are they going to have these empire-size wind turbines out there, but they're going to actually have one of these conversion plants out there where they're going to be able to do all these horrible things to the water, and we're just going to live with it because there's going to be no impact. Do you believe that? I know I sure as hell don't. And you can find that impact statement on our website. I do believe that I just sent that to Diane to put on our website. That's OWAT. I'm sorry, the Oregonians Against Wind. No, that's OAWT.org. And I highly recommend you go check it out and see what's going on because, well, these people are lying to you. They're lying to you. And this is what they want to do. You see this, the top site right there. That's the site for the Coos Bay Reedsport lease area. That's the call lease area. That's about 32 miles off of the coast. So they're going to have one of these converting stations somewhere in the ocean, heating up our water, adding chemicals to the water, and killing fish larvae. And that's not going to have any impact on us. I don't know if you believe that. I've got some property in Arizona I want to sell you because this is where it's really heading. This is what's going to happen. The ocean is going to dry up and blow away thanks to these windmills, and we're going to create the river Styx where we all sail off to hell. Just my opinion. Just my opinion. And I think if you can, let's see, Oregon Outlaw, he says, this would make a good short and get the word out. Yes, it would. And we definitely need to get the word out. I agree with you. Everyone should know about this because they're not even talking about this. And you know what else they're not talking about? In New Jersey, one of the wind turbine companies is now demanding the government use eminent domain to take people's property so that they can build the infrastructure to transport the energy to wherever the hell it's going. That's going to happen here, and they're not even talking about that. That's the worst part of this is eminent domain is coming to Coos County, and they're not even talking about it. So not only are you going to get the river Styx, I guess it don't really matter because you're not going to own any property on the river Styx because they're going to use eminent domain to take your property from you. Isn't that nice? What a lovely thing our government does. What a lovely group of people. That's why it's time to take away their power, take away their budgets, and let's give it back to the people and let us get back to living our life. So Oregonians Against Wind Turbines. You can go to our Facebook page, Oregonians Against Wind Turbines. Find out what we're doing there. All our latest events are happening right there, and I completely recommend you go check it out. We are doing our best. We are now a political action committee, and we will be having events, not just the rallies, but other events to get people notified that this is going to be on the ballot, that we need you to say, yes, we want our commissioners to oppose this. And that's on the ballot in Curry County, and that's on the ballot in Coos County. And I couldn't be any more prouder of our commissioners for doing that. There's a rally against the wind turbines, 2 rallies in one day. That's right. 2 rallies in one day. This is what we call the Breaking Wind campaign because we're going to break wind. We're going to break their back over our knee, and we're going to throw them in the ocean, and they can be fish bait. And and believe me, I know executives from the government, bureaucrats from the government, they're filthy creatures. I know. You're saying, Rob, why would we throw them into the ocean? Well, it's better than them building these horrible facilities that are going to pollute our ocean. Let's put them in the ocean and let the little fish. eat on their bodies. That's what we need to do, because these people, they're trying to destroy our country. So this is why we're calling it the Breaking Wind campaign. We're going to break wind as much as we can. And you need to bring an American flag if you want. We have signs available. If you want to pick up a sign, you want one for your front yard or your business or your house, come down to the rally and we'll give you a sign. That's a pretty damn good deal. We haven't got our measure signs yet because they don't have a measure number. This is how far advanced we are in this campaign. We don't even have a measure number for the measure that we're supporting. But this rally is happening this Saturday, August 24th. Meet at the Coos Bay Boardwalk. Meet there at noon this Saturday, August 24th. We'll get you a windmill sign. No problem. We can take care of you on that. And afterwards, because we're only going to be there from noon to about 1:30. Then at 1:30, we're going down to Bandon. That's why I told you 2 rallies in one day. We're going down to Bandon at 2 o'clock. Saturday, the same day, August 24th, Highway 101 in the Visitor Center. That's right there in downtown Bandon on Highway 101. We're going to be also rallying there to get people aware of what we're doing. And then we're going to do it again in September. And at the bottom there, oawt.org. That's our website. Go check it out. It's a pretty damn good site. And I want to thank Diane for getting that done. It was a good idea that she had. And we're going to continue this campaign. We're not going to put up with this shit. We're not going to deal with it. And we're going to break some wind, breaking wind. That's what we do. Nobody's better at breaking wind than I am. I can tell you that right now. Yeah, really, seriously. And so let's go on to the Gathering of Eagles. This is a great event. This happens at the Ames Ranch. Bob Soden, he's the leader of this group, this organization who does this. And this is basically going to be on election integrity. You can go to their website at OregonLibertyCoalition.org. Once again, this is OregonLibertyCoalition.org. Bob Soden is the director of that group. I think that's the title of his position. But you can find out more about this on my website. Go to robtaylorreport.com. Go to the blog page. And right there, you'll see all the information for the Gathering of Eagles. This is happening on Saturday, September 14th. You know, I haven't been there the last couple of ones, but I was a speaker at the first 2 Gathering of Eagles event. It was a pretty cool event, and I highly recommend people go check it out. Tomorrow, there's a BOC meeting in the Owens building. They are going to be talking about, there was one item on the agenda, and they were going to be talking about access to the forest roads. You know how they closed off all the forest roads? Well, they're going to be having a discussion on that. And I think if you're interested in what's happening in our county, it's a good thing to be at these BOC meetings. 9:30 a.m. Tuesday, tomorrow morning, August 20th. Please show up, be there or be square. And of course, anyone who is living in Coos Bay, the Coos Bay City Council meets tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Boy, I think that's cut off on the screen. Let me see if I can get that back. Let me cut off my banner. Yep, there's 6 p.m. Tuesday, August 20th, tomorrow night at the Coos Bay, it's the Coos Bay City Council meeting at the City Hall building, which is right there on Central, 500 Central. And this is happening 6 p.m. Tuesday, tomorrow, August 20th. And the Bandon's having a meeting as well tonight at 7 o'clock. I know that I got the date wrong on that. I got to remind everyone, I am sponsored. And I want to congratulate the winner of one of my sponsors' favorite game, Where's 3H Tree Service? Yes, we all like playing Where's 3H Tree Service. I think Matt likes it almost as much as the people who win money from 3H Tree Service. But we did get a winner before the show, and so that's why we didn't have Matt on to talk about what has been going on. You got to go check out his videos on Facebook, 3H Tree Service Facebook, and see some of the work they've done. Very integral work at taking out trees. You got some trees, you got some shrubbery you need taken care of. Call 541-294-1800. Once again, call Matt at 541-294-1800 and ask him about all the services provided by 3H Tree Service. They can remove those trees with surgical precision. And of course, Tom and Giggs, Tim was on the show. Love having Tim on. He's always a good ranter, and I love a good ranter. He came on and ranted quite well. You can go to Tom of Needs at 135 South Shoneman Street. That's Tom and Giggs at 135 South Shoneman Street in Coos Bay, Oregon, behind the car wash. And of course, Herbal Choices for all your Herbal Choices needs. You got herbal needs, you got Herbal Choices at Herbal Choices, because they have the best choices in town, and really good deals over there. I can't give you prices or anything. I think that's illegal. I don't know. But Herbal Choices, for those of you who are, you partake in your herbal delights, well, Herbal Choices is the best cannabis dispensary you can go to. They have 5 stores. They have 4 here in Coos County. They have one in Reedsport, one in Reedsport on Highway 101, one in North Bend on Highway 101, one in Coos Bay on Highway 101, and one in South Bandon on Highway 101. That's one of my favorite stores. I love going to the Bandon store because very nice people there. I know several of those people. My son went to school with a couple of the people who now work at Herbal Choices at the Bandon store. It's funny. I go down there and see him and it's like, hey, weren't you that kid who used to be over hanging out at my house all the time, eating our food? Yeah, I remember that. Well, I need some Herbal Choices. Well, really great store. I like those kids, and I'm glad to see them doing honest work. Anyone who's doing honest work, hey, you have my support. And so Herbal Choices for all your herbal needs. And like I said, 5 stores, and they got one in Charleston as well. Off one of my sponsors, Oregon Firearms Federation. Please, if you support your Second Amendment rights, support Oregon Firearms Federation. Go to OregonFirearms.org. Once again, that's OregonFirearms.org. And sign up for their newsletter, because you can find out a lot of stuff from what's going on. They're not my sponsors, but I highly recommend you go check out Bandon Gun Club. You can find out more at bandongunclub.org. Or if you want to sight in your rifle, go to Tioga Sports Park, and you can find out more at TiogaSportsPark.org. Once again, that's TiogaSportsPark.org. And I want to thank you all for tuning in. I really don't know what we're going to rant about this Friday, but you know me, we're going to have a rant for you on Friday. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. In fact, I'm glad this comes to mind, because this Friday at 6:30, this would be the 23rd, the Citizens Restoring Liberty are going to be having a meeting. That's once again 6:30 at the Restoration Worship Center across from Ray's here in Bandon, across from Ray's. And they're going to be having guests. I think I'm one of the guest speakers. The last I checked, I was. We're going to be talking about windmills. And if you'd like to come and get a windmill sign, I'll make sure and have them there at Citizens Restoring Liberty. But come out and meet the group. It's a pretty cool group, and I think you'll be delighted in what they're doing out there. That's Citizens Restoring Liberty, across from Ray's here in Bandon, and that's going to be happening 6:30. And so I'm going to do the Friday night rant after the meeting, because we usually stand in the parking lot after these meetings. The meetings get over with at 8 o'clock. And then we stand there in the parking lot and we'll talk for another 40 minutes. So we're just going to do the rant right there in the parking lot, because that's where the best conversations happen. That's where people are very passionate, and they really want to talk about the issues that involve all of us. And they get going. Let me tell you, after one of these Citizens Restoring Liberty meetings, they really get going in the parking lot. So, yeah, definitely this Friday, the Friday night rant, I think I'm going to be live from Citizens Restoring Liberty. I got some new cool mics. We got some lavalier mics, and we'll be able to hook ourselves up, and the audio should be fine. You know, I did that one of those shows, the Friday night rant, from the Douglas County Fair, and the audio sucked, which really sucked, because we had a lot of good conversations with people, and you really couldn't hear them. You could hear me, you could hear the person I was with, but you couldn't hear the person that I was talking with very well without cranking up your TV. I apologize for that. So I got some new lavalier mics, and we'll be able to hook everyone up, and it should be a kick-ass time. And, you know, that's just the way Taylor Report. So tune in next Friday, tune in next Monday. Hopefully I'll have some good guests for you. But until then, folks, you know what I always say, Carry on, Coos County. Carry on, America. Carry on.